This
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tinfoil Spotlight. How's your Wednesday doing? Hope you're doing great. A little early today, not too bad, but yeah, starting a little before 5. Yeah, we're doing a tinfoil thing today. Doesn't always have to be Tuesdays. I can do what I want. It's not a full Tinfoil Tuesday, as it is a Tinfoil Spotlight, as the name implies. The whole stream's going to be about one individual. It is, I noticed, the 9-year anniversary the other day. We're a week or two late. It's fine. Of Mark Sargent posting Flat Earth Clues, which was a seminal work that kind of kicked off the modern Flat Earth movement. Now, of course, we've seen this arc happen where back in like 2017, I believe, is when there was the peak of Flat Earth on like Google Trends. It wasn't just a thing in their circles, but like people were talking about it as a jokey thing. Did you know there are people who still believe the Earth is flat? This is when there were actual, YouTube videos of theirs that would go little viral. Not like a ton, but enough. And Mark was the guy that kind of kicked that off. It wasn't only his doing. The algorithms of social media have a lot to answer for there. But I did want to take a look at the last 9 years of his career, almost a decade, and see what he's done. See that arc of Flat Earth becoming this weird thing he posted about to all of a sudden a bunch of other conspiracy theorists believing in it, becoming a phenomenon, and then the slow death. Certainly, Flat Earthers exist today. We cover them on Tinfoil Tuesday, CC, but pretty much the recruitment is over. There aren't a ton of new people going into Flat Earth these days. But nonetheless, it's interesting, and he is a central figure. You may also recognize him from Behind the Curve, a documentary that was on Netflix for a while. I'm actually not sure if it still is, but I'm sure you can find it somewhere. I know it's up for rent on YouTube. But Mark is actually sort of as much as a documentary has a protagonist, he's the protagonist of the documentary, though the documentary certainly doesn't frame him as correct. He's the main character. He takes up 3 of the 6 pictures on the back of the box. There he is in the glasses right there. I would recommend this, by the way. If you want a good overview of sort of what flat earthers believe, not bad. I don't necessarily agree with everything they say in this about flat earthers, just in my own experience, talking to some of these people and interacting with them. Some of the motivations are certainly off, but it's a good overview of it. Your favorite part is Nathan Thompson casually dropping that he has a brain coach. Yeah, the brain coach is the guy who taught him about flat Earth. Nathan is actually on this back cover too. He's just wearing his globe helmet that he has, so you can't see his face. But that's him. That's Nathan on the back of this Blu-ray. Yep. Nathan is the guy that was involved in that YouTube prank show where they were wearing the rubber duck costumes. I don't know if you remember that. Anyway, would recommend Behind the Curve. If we ever get an opportunity to watch it, like if it's ever on Amazon Prime and we can do a watch party or something, I'd love to, but, yeah, it's a great thing. This was also, I should say, I like to give credit, this was directed by, Daniel J. Clark. So, that's cool. Good job, Daniel. One of my favorite documentaries. Enough to have the physical one in my collection. So that's great. Maybe I should reach out and see if he wants to talk someday. I've been thinking about doing that. Doing more talking with people who also are interested in conspiracy and sovsits, and just talking about it with someone. Because, like, I like talking to you guys, but, you know, I don't know. Someone who I can talk to on camera. I don't know. Is that the helmet he wears when he's being particularly anti-Semitic? Oh, who knows? Yeah, for those who don't know, Nathan Thompson got exposed saying some really yikesy stuff. He was referencing the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, which is a antique forgery that was created in order to spread anti-Semitic conspiracy theories about Jewish people. So Nathan Thompson is, well, he believes that stuff. It's unfortunate. At least he had the decency to kind of go away for a while. Benekagami says, isn't Flat Earth Truths a horribly organized YouTube series? Like, doesn't he have his own strongest argument, like 9 videos in? It's been a while since I watched it. I actually thought about someday doing, like, a marathon stream. Not like a subathon. I can't imagine I'm going to be doing that for a while, but, some kind of stream where it's like, we're gonna sit and watch all of Flat Earth Clues, and it's like 2 days worth of material. Just do an absolute crazy thing. Maybe, I don't know. But it's not good. I've seen it. A lot of Flat Earth arguments that you've heard have come from it. Maybe most of them. Maybe not most I've heard, but I know a lot of them because of the nature of my job and the stuff I read. But even he got a lot of his stuff from older books, like Zetetic Astronomy, which I think was written by Robotham. Could be wrong. Trying to cite it. But that's a text that a lot of Flat Earthers use, so. Benekagami says, isn't... Oh, I just read that. Doing great. Oh yeah, he did do the creepy school thing, didn't he? Nathan, not, Mark. That was a shame. Hope you have fun writing stat blocks, Cthulhu Flower. D&D sounds fun. Anyway, so it was recently, like I said, the 9-year anniversary. Sorry it's not 10. I couldn't wait another year. Of Flat Earth Clues. And he did this special 9-year anniversary stream, so I wanted to take a look at some of this, his reflections on the last almost 10 years, and then we'll go look at some of his work. Let's just get into it. I'll wait to share my opinion on Mark until later.
Welcome to the 9-year anniversary of Flat Earth Clues. Good job, Mark.
Thank you. Yay!
Yay!
Insert applause noise here.
Mark was holding his microphone before Zoomers, by the way. I just want to point that out. He was ahead of the curve on that one. Ba-doonch. Yeah, I don't get that. Get a thing. Get a thing.
Yeah.
Who's the lady? I'm actually not sure. Just a co-host on this episode. He used to work with Patricia Steer, might have been her last name. I'm not sure. But she got bullied out of the community because it's a conspiracy community. And can you guess what she got bullied out of the community for, chat? A community of conspiracy theorists. And there was a prominent woman. Go, chat, if you haven't seen the documentary. How did she get bullied out of the community? Briar Rose gets it. Yep. Transvestigation. Transvestigation. She is cis, by the way, to my knowledge. Not that it's anyone's business, but, you know, conspiracy theorists doing the thing they do.
So 9 years ago today, in 2015, I created the very first Flat Earth Clues part one. Well, actually, it was the introduction to it, just called Flat Earth Clues Introduction, and which was 12 minutes and 36 seconds long. And officially, wow, yeah, there it is. It just changed today. So it says 9 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
9 years, almost a decade. So next year we're going to have a big shebang. It'll be a whole decade.
For me, well, okay. First, you're making some big assumptions. First, you're thinking that 2024, we're gonna go from A to Z, and everything's gonna be perfectly fine. Which come on.
I didn't even dress my set properly. Give me a sec. That's better.
Come on, I have my doubts at this stage. I really, really do. But for me, 9 has always been a better number than 10. I mean, I know 10 in the metric system, and it's a nice clean number, and everyone does, like 10-year anniversary and 20-year anniversary. But for me, 9.
We're not doing bingo today, just because it's one topic, so I don't think we would get anywhere with it. And you want me to say hi to your mom, Nancy? Hi, Nancy. How's it going? Loved your name in Nightmare on Elm Street, parts 1 and 3.
I'm kind of a numerology guy.
Hats off. What would you like me to wear, Starry Beauty? He's a numerology guy. Yeah, Mark started before Flat Earth. He was already into conspiracy theories. He has a tendency to tell the same stories a lot, so I apologize for that. He's a little bit Tommy Tallarico in that sense, but, it happens. My pick, oh boy, Witch Hat, probably.
You know that. And see, 9 is a bigger number for me, 3 by 3. And 3, because 333 is my favorite number, and if you add those up, they equal 9. So yeah, it's really cool for me because when I go into the clues on my channel, it's
I don't even understand that as like that's not a coincidental thing. That's just math. I don't even understand like what he's getting at with that. He's just reciting things you can do with three of those numbers. Okay.
Clues introduction. And
do I know where the bats are?
It says 9 years ago.
Sorry, I'm looking for the witch hat. It's got to be around here somewhere.
But part 1, which isn't until tomorrow. I think I made it technically on the 11th. That still says 8 years. So that will change. So you guys want to watch that? You can go into my channel and you'll see the dates change. They'll go from 8 to 9 from part 1 and part 2, and I might as well give you guys a little bit of a background because again, I feel, because I'm doing the meetup in Salt Lake City.
Sorry, this is bugging me. Where the heck is my hat? That's my favorite hat. Where could it have gone? There aren't that many places for it to go. That is bizarre. Someone came into my house and stole the witch hat. Okay, sorry about that. That was a waste of time. I'll wear the flower crown then. That's gonna bug me. I'll find it after stream. I actually have a rack over there, believe it or not. It's not a hat rack, it's more a coat thing, but I could put hats on it. Okay.
A few weeks. They're flying me out for that. And
nice, Orion Cooper. That Lego globe looks so cool.
I realized as we came up on this 9-year anniversary that there's probably going to be some people there that have no idea who I am, because 9 years is a long time. A lot can happen in 9 years. And so I might as well explain.
That seems presumptuous anyway, to assume that people would know who you are, and I even assume he's talking about within the Flat Earth community. Like, yeah, you haven't been the biggest Flat Earther basically since a year into the Flat Earth. I don't know. I've always got a little bit of a ego vibe from Mark, but that's neither here nor there. Doesn't matter.
It's by heart. But let me give you a little background on what the hell happened. So in 2014, I was in Boulder, Colorado. I'd been living there for 20 years, playing video games and teaching proprietary software and stuff like that. And I was in between tech companies. The tech boom had busted when the financial crisis hit right after Obama was first elected, and the tech companies were
seems like an interesting random thing to throw in that sentence, unless you think they're related. Remember when Obama single-handedly destroyed the market? That's definitely what happened.
There's chaos out there. So I had some free time on my hands. But I had some money. I'd made some good investments. It's like, what the hell? Again, if you're not married and have kids, I took some time off. I was like, I'm going to play some Warcraft. I'm going to delve into some conspiracies and see what see if I can finish the internet again. And I pretty much did. To where in the summer of 2014,
collapsed right before Obama was elected. That makes sense.
I remember.
I thought it was a little bit into it, but it wasn't the result of any of his policies because nothing had been enacted yet. He was a new president, but I guess I was young. I don't remember.
It was a beautiful sunny day. The drapes were pulled, not because I was watching porn or anything.
Was it way before? Okay. Well, that's me misremembering then. That's fucking hilarious.
But because I didn't want the glare on my monitor, because I don't think we didn't even have HD monitors back then. And I happened to I happened to see over on the right-hand side, there was some Flat Earth videos, and one of them was done by Jay Henning Caliggia, if you remember that channel from way back.
Am I just thinking 2008 because of the housing crash? Because housing, I thought, was 08. Was there an earlier, were the banks in 07 prior to the actual housing thing?
It's Matt Boylan, otherwise known as...
Because it's usually referred to as the 2008 financial crisis.
Math Powerland. Because, when you want to rename...
Is it just a misnomer? And it started before that?
With something eye-catching.
I'm just having a little cognitive decline. It happens to the best of us. I've been here longer on the internet than Mark Sargent. And I'll have you know, I've lost even more followers than him over time, so I win.
Like naming your first name Math and your second name Powerland. Whatever.
I understand that the financial crisis wasn't caused by Obama. I was never saying that.
Whatever.
Actually, did you ever hear his reasoning?
Oh, duh. I'm so fucking stupid. The election is in 2008. The election is in 2008, and then you get sworn in the next year. I'm so fucking dumb sometimes.
I actually thought
No, what was it?
Well, they use math to deceive you, and what are they hiding? And they use math, and they're do it so they can have power, and they're hiding land or something like that. For all the power, and they're hiding land. Something like that.
Wow. All right.
He said it better than me, I will have to say, because it was his shtick.
Sure.
I do want to point out, it's kind of interesting. Mark Sargent used to be huge in the flat earth community, but even now he doesn't get that many views for the number of subscribers he has. He has 104,000 subscribers, and this video, which is like his 9-year anniversary video, which you would think would, like, for his channel, do pretty well. It's like a retrospective thing. Has a little under 4,000 views? Like, and that's more than a lot of his videos get. A lot of them are only hovering at, like, a little under 2 or between 2 to 4. Which, like, isn't nothing on YouTube for a small channel, but that's the thing. He wasn't that small of a channel when he started. Just interesting. I know some of it's YouTube cracking down on stuff like this, but I do find it funny that he's almost a victim of his own success. He became so big in the flat earth community by sort of helping push it with his videos that he became the center of a lot of conspiratorial beliefs, that he was, you know, controlled opposition. That's why it's always fickle and dangerous to, like, become some sort of right-wing or conspiratorial popular figure. It's a fickle audience, and not in, like, a predictable way, in a really, really weird nonsense way.
But I was
And-
like, well, that's kind of clever.
And the video that hooked me
Hey, Spoken Dogman.
was that got me interested, because it was like, again, I was
Yeah,
really
1 to 2K. I would put it more in the range of, the average is probably 2.5. Some go up to 6 on a really, like popular one, but usually it's in 1.5 to 2. So average in 3, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, it's really bad. It's really bad for those numbers. Fenekagami says, math tells us we're wrong, therefore they are using meth to deceive you, because yeah, math has a lot of room for interpretation. Sorry, I read that as meth initially, instead of math. I'm doing great today. What is going on with me? I took my meds. I'm fine.
curious. But one, as you know, when I clicked on my very first flat earth video, I had a visceral reaction to it. I got physically flushed. And I'm despite what you guys may think, I am very introspective. Like, I constantly, like, monitor myself, and it's like, okay, what's happening? And it's like, wait a minute, why am I getting embarrassed? Like, looking at a flat earth video, this is silly. I'm in my place alone with the drapes pulled, right, and the doors locked. It's not like I'm checking out, gay interracial dwarf porn. Right, or anything like that, which wouldn't actually shock me, right? It'd be like, it's not me, but it wouldn't embarrass me. And so once I clicked on it and I got visibly flushed, I was like, okay, what is happening here? And I remember Matt's video, which I talked about a little bit in the documentary Behind the Curve, where it was the only good video he ever did. For those who don't know, Matt Powerland did exactly one excellent video. And he was like, I'm one to talk. Like, I did the Flat Earth Clues, and then after that, I was just kind of making all
I
sorts of
wondered when Bailey would show up to say weird things again.
stuff. But
You didn't get banned last time, even though it was pretty clear you were the same person as that other person. How's it going?
Matt, here was the difference. Matt, if you guys didn't know, in most of his videos was either drunk, getting drunk, or trying to sober up. In most of his videos, except for one. And credit to the girl who I don't know who he was. He was dating, because he's from Montreal, Canada, in Quebec. And this girl, his girlfriend at the time, sat him down on a couch and just ran the camera. She never got on frame, just set the camera in one place. There was no editing, just ran it. And she goes, tell the freaking story, right? Tell it.
I watched that video.
And it was a great story. Where he was really low key. It was the only time I didn't see him yelling at the camera.
I have to say that was probably the most.
This does not sound like a stable person that you should be getting advice from. Like, you're talking all about how, like, this person's generally inebriated or sobering up, or they're, like, really out there. Like, this person is having what appears to be a moment of clarity, and you're like, now I like what they're throwing down. Like, I don't know. I'm glad that they seemed to be doing better in that video. Substance abuse isn't a fucking joke. It sucks. But, like, I don't know. I don't know if most improved gets you a medal of like, I trust you to tell me about the cosmology of the Earth, which is opposed to everything I've ever been taught ever. It's a bit of a leap. It's a bit of a leap.
Most genuine I'd ever seen him.
Yes,
Like at that point in time.
absolutely. It was a great. In fact, it was a great short story, and I played it back enough times and I told the story enough times, which is why they used my narration in the documentary. Because I joked to the producers, I go, "Look, I can tell it better than Matt can at this point." And
Heat Preacher Matt Powell? Actually, do I remember that? Hold on. Let me look. Matt Powell. This guy? Let's see. Does he do Flat Earth? Looks like it. Looks like that's him. Not familiar with him, to be honest.
I could. And the story went that he was working. Now, this is the part where I think he took out a degree of separation. We've all done it to a certain degree, which is, Mark Twain's line, never let the truth get in the way of a good story.
Different Matt. Gotcha.
Thank you. Like, for example, you hear it's
different guy, same name.
You hear about something interesting involving a bus crash, right? And then, but you heard it from a friend of a friend. Eventually, if you tell the story enough, you were practically on.
I've seen it a long time ago, but that stand-up came out decades before I was born, so I've only seen it in passing.
The bus. Because it's a better story, right? You take out the degrees of separation. No one wants to hear that, oh, I heard from somebody that heard from somebody.
I think the difference there is that he was talking about him. I could be misremembering, but like, I'm pretty sure he was talking about himself. Self-deprecation can be a thing in comedy. It can also be harmful. So if I was talking about myself, for instance, when I was dealing with my drinking problem, been sober for years now, maybe I could say some things in jest. That's fine. I do know he set himself on fire. I knew that. But like, I would never make a joke about someone else's substance abuse, or if I do, it's a mistake and something that I later regret, because no one's perfect, but like, yeah. I don't know. I think there's a difference between self-deprecation about a problem you have had and then projecting that outwards and joking about other people's problems, even if it's the same problem.
Somebody. So in Matt's case, he said that he worked for NASA directly. I don't think he worked for NASA directly. In fact, I haven't for...
He's also a liar.
For a number of years. I think he worked for a guy who worked for NASA. I think he worked for a high-level NASA engineer.
Some people think Mark Sargent doesn't actually believe in Flat Earth anymore, but he can't move himself away from the belief because he's built his entire livelihood and community around it. I was actually going to talk about that at some point today. I assumed it would come to a point where it would be... How do I put this? There are interviews he has done where that seems more apparent, though, in fairness, I recognize that I might be reading into something that isn't there. I'm not great at interpreting body language or, like, people's vibes. I'm not great at it. So I'm not going to say that. But there have been interviews where he responds to things in ways that make me believe he might not believe Flat Earth, at least not as strongly as he used to. Let's put it that way. I brought this up before. I don't remember who wrote it, but it was something along the lines of it's nearly impossible to get someone to admit that they've been fooled if their livelihood depends on it. I think that's a pretty good truism. There's a reason that's an idiom.
Engineer who made a lot of money and had a place out in the Hamptons. And again, Matt, this was back when Matt was he was in his 20s. And again, if you look at his early stuff, good looking guy. He went out to Hollywood, tried to be an actor, got some bit parts. He could sort of sing, sort of dance,
Upton Sinclair.
But he could paint. I watched him do all these things simultaneously in some videos. And of course,
is Upton Sinclair the Jungle guy who wrote The Jungle? Is he the guy that wrote that? Or am I misremembering?
He was invited to things, and if you know anything about NASA engineers and engineers in general, they were really, really boring people. So I think he was invited. It's like, yeah, invite the cool kid. to our NASA party out in the Hamptons, because he was doing painting this part of this guy's house. He can talk people into, when people see him paint up close, they commission him to do weird art projects. Now you're not going to get it done quickly, but it's going to be kind of cool, and he's going to be kind of entertaining to watch
Different
as
guys, similar names.
does this. So he's there at this party, and the story goes is that the power went out. It's East Coast storm. Power goes out, and they're down to wine and candles, and it's just a whole bunch of high-ranking.
Depraved Ambiance says, all I'm saying is, and this was in response to someone, all I'm saying is that there are people in the observer community who think that they tend to categorize flat earth proponents into true believers in pose, which might not be a useful practice, but when they apply it to Mark Sargent, he ends up in the Poe category. I think that I understand that for practical purposes, there can be reasons why you would put them into two distinct categories like that, but I don't think that's how people work. In my observation of conspiratorial beliefs, the cognitive dissonance is strong. Like, even amongst the grifters, or people who you would, if you had to put into one camp or the other, maybe put in the grifter camp. People can believe things that are... I know you agree with me. Sorry, Depraved Ambiance. I'm not explaining myself well. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just trying to respond to what you said about other people's categorization. Anyway. People can be grifters and kind of know what they're doing isn't true and have inklings about that, but at the same time close themselves off from those thoughts despite them being there, because that's how denial works. I don't know. Again, I'm not trying to, that doesn't mean that if Mark Sargent knows or on some level is aware that Flat Earth isn't true, he's culpable for scamming people, as far as I'm concerned, in hypothetical. But I don't think it's as simple as true believer or grifter. There are gray areas. With 100 bits, Moronix says, "Hi Hannah, always like when people share happy stories during your stream. So last week I got my first appointment with the gender clinic after being on a waiting list for 6 years. That's great. Congratulations." And DM Trey says, "F you, Mark, engineers are the funnest, most unhinged people on the planet. It's like regular life, but a bomb is always 15 minutes away." Oh.
Government officials at a vacation house talking shop, right? And Matt's just this 24, 25-year-old clueless pretty boy. And
Am I ever gonna do Mega Rich Monday ever again? Maybe. I don't know. I'd have to find some really good content for it. I'll look. It just didn't seem like there was a ton of interest in it. Like, it was kind of something I was into for a little while, and I kind of got my fill, and then people didn't ask about it or anything, but I can try it. I can, in the next week or so, look for stuff and see if I find enough material. For those who weren't there at that time, I did some streams where we looked at, like, obscene things rich people build or buy. Just things that are, like, the apex of conspicuous consumption. Basically, it was just I think part of it's that I moved away from just wanting to look at things and going, like, fuck that. It's fun sometimes, but at the most, I'll just say the same thing over and over again. This is ostentatious. This is a waste. This is obscene. Basically, just ends up a stream where I'm just, like, indignant. McMansions might be fun. McMansions are a fun topic.
Some conversation comes up, and they're talking about Antarctica. And one of the guys says, "Yeah, I heard a rumor that GPS doesn't work down there." And one of the other guys says, "Oh, hey, Fred, you should send one of your teams out," right? Because everyone knew it. Like, these were high-ranking guys to see if that works, right? And then another guy chimed in. He goes, "Well, if he sends his team out that far, they're not coming back." It's like, what? It's like, why? And Matt at that point, he's like, he doesn't know anything from anything. I would have done the same thing if I was in my 20s. It's like, why wouldn't they come back, right?
Sorry, DM Trey. I'm actually going to show some other stuff right now because he's being boring as fuck in this video. I'll come back to it later, but we need to intersperse this with his ridiculous interviews and discussions. I did your bits, DM Trey. Yeah, I got those bits. Bailey says, check out the river theory and it may convert you to a flat earther. No, is that the thing where they say, like, look at these rivers, they flow upward, but it's not upward in elevation, it's upward in, like, the subjective direction that you see a globe in a picture, because there's no up or down in space. I don't know if that's what you're talking about. I think you're a troll anyway, so it doesn't matter. But I do like to address these things. It's a fun exercise for me, so... Profane Priestess says, today I schedule an appointment with my school to see an advisor about my schedule and speak with the disability services. I'm so proud of myself that I'm finally getting out of this wretched state. If you want to see the big stainless steel arch in the later in the year, I'm getting an almost free ride to school, so I'll get you that dinner we wanted to go to sometime. Much love for giving me entertainment throughout the process. Well, fuck yeah. That's great. Congratulations. Hell yeah.
So, we've got our props. I believe you have yours too, but this is awesome. So, first of all, explain...
I don't call the people in my stream a troll, Bailey. It's just that the only time you ever talk is when it's to directly say something that's obviously absurd, and you subscribed or you followed me literally at the exact same time as another known troll. And you were like, again, I'm falling into it. I'm having a discussion like they're having a good faith conversation. That's on me.
Where your belief that the Earth is flat comes from.
Oh, this is an interview he did, somewhere. Don't know what news station this is, or looks like a morning show.
So, we've got our props. I believe you have yours too, but this is awesome. So, first of all, explain where your belief that the Earth is flat comes from.
Sure. My belief where the Earth is flat comes from 5 different reasons, real fast. 1, long-distance photography.
Oh, no. He did not have media training before this. Yeep. Fenekagami says, your truism about convincing people they're wrong also applies when you have a worldview that makes you basically victim blame people have been conned. Conservatives and conspiracy theorists both refer to victims of deception as sheeple and functionally believe deceiving someone for your own benefit is good, and it's the victim's fault they're stupid enough to be tricked. People like that would find admitting they were tricked the equivalent of ego death. I understand what you're saying, and I think you're describing a phenomenon where you're recognizing that, like... How do I put this? I don't think they see, like, for instance, anti-vaxxers. I don't think they see people who are what they would call sheeple, who are, you know, normal people who get, like, vaccines or whatever, or at least understand them, whatever. It's not that they think they've just been scammed, it's that they think they've been brainwashed, which I think has a different connotation. I think it's more in line with the dehumanization of their political and ideological enemies in general than it has to do with specifically not feeling bad for people who are scammed. Like, sure, wealthy people might be more prone to that, but I think your average, like, right-wing voter who isn't wealthy wouldn't necessarily feel like that. Like, if someone was directly scammed and they saw it as a scam in the way that you are describing, but I don't know if they see it like that. Maybe I'm splitting hairs and just doing a semantics thing. I don't know.
Which is, if it is a globe, then we shouldn't be able to see as far
Overthought, thanks for gifting a sub to Bailey.
as we can with high-def cameras. 2 would be gravity versus the vacuum of space, meaning the atmosphere should be sucked
Oh, he's like, I have 5 minutes, how much can I say? I don't even think he's trying to gish gallop, I just don't think he knows how to do a public presentation here.
out into space
Oh
almost
no.
instantly. The power of the vacuum cannot be defeated by gravity. 3rd would be the eclipse shadow. The eclipse shadow, it's the wrong size. The moon is 2,000 miles wide, and yet the moon...
Like, I recognize all the arguments he's trying to make here because I'm familiar with flat earth arguments. But if you weren't and you were just watching this show, he would sound like he's babbling nonsense. Because these words mean something to him, but he doesn't understand... He doesn't understand what others don't know that he knows about this mythology and the jargon. So he's, like, shortening it in a way that makes it incomprehensible. I do that sometimes. Everyone can do it, but, like...
shadow is only 70 miles wide. That's a 97...
I'm sure there's another word for this, but I've heard it as, like, the psychiatrist fallacy. It's probably come up with by a psychiatrist, or just by it's probably called that, but there's probably another word for that that's more broad.
decrease. It can't happen. Fourth would be the temperature of the moon, and I know we're pressed for time, so I'll rattle off real quick. The temperature of the moon. The moon generates a cold light. Look it up yourself. And fifth would be the Van Allen radiation belts. Van Allen radiation belts are super deadly. How did the American space program go through it? Round trips. Nobody died. Nobody even got cancer. There's still 5 of them walking around today.
The cancer rates of people who go into space are notably higher than people who have not, for the record.
Good. I think you nailed it. Thanks for coming on.
Like, it's not so much that no one should ever go into space, but, like, it's enough that it is a problem that needs solving if people are to continue going into space, and it's something to be warned about if you were to go to space. It's not nothing.
Mark.
I'm in.
I do have a couple of other questions, Dave.
Okay.
Flat
Good night, everybody.
Like yourself, flat earthers believe that we are actually living in a dome. So can you explain to us how that works? And the ice,
Simpsons.
Right.
there's an ice wall, is that right?
Sure. Okay, so the mainstream globe proponents believe that you are on a little rock with water that sticks to the outside of it that's flying through 5 different directions, right? You can get rid of that. What we think is that you are living in
I want one of these little mini domes so bad. Do you know how badly I want one of these goddamn flat earth things?
a building, a structure, a planetarium, a terrarium, just like this. It's a little bit of a
I have enough globes. I need a flat earth model.
snow globe with walls and a floor and a ceiling, and that all the continents look pretty much the same with the exception of Antarctica, which is stretched
A guy sells these at the conventions, by the way, the flat earth conventions. He actually shows up in the Behind the Curve documentary. There are people in this community who have basically created little side businesses where they make stuff for this small sub-community.
around the entire outside, not like a Game of Thrones ice wall, but a very, very large continent that goes on for thousands of miles inland.
Yeah. So there's White Walkers out there.
Oh yeah,
So then
this
when-
happens regularly. They did this both in Australia and the UK. He may have appeared on some American talk shows too, but part of it feels a little like, hey, we heard this American flat Earth guy. Let's have him on our talk show, and we'll make fun of him, and it'll play into the stereotype of the like ignorant American guy.
When I was growing up,
It's basically what's the opposite of a puff piece? It's a mockery. They're mocking him basically.
right? When I was growing up, Mark, and we see shots of space.
It's a cleaned up version of a freak show. It's them going like, haha, we're gonna show you this guy and not laugh at his face, but you're gonna. It's Dr. Phil. Dr. Phil. Ronick says, imagine flat earth snow globe. It'd be perfect for conspiracy theories themed shelf, right? Safia, thanks for 4 months of membership on YouTube. Says your makeup looks so pretty. Love the blush lip look. Thank you. I appreciate it. I actually just got new makeup. My old one was not working as well. So this one's good.
And we live in a solar system with planets, and all the planets are round.
I just mean in terms of smoothness, if anyone cares. Like, it was a little, I don't know.
So then how come we're flat and they're round, or am I not seeing the right
when
thing?
we see shots of the Earth from space, it's a sphere.
Well, there you go. Somebody's got to be lying. And if you believe the American space program, well, you have another thing coming.
The American space program isn't the only one that has pictures from space, though. Mark. Benikagami says, I have painted with a broad brush here. There's probably more empathy for victims of deception and the, quote, brainwashing than my generalization implies. But a lot of the more activist types like Call, for example, or another MAGA dude I know basically fit the mold. Both laugh at others for falling for scams and have no empathy. Sure, but that's probably a more general, like, narcissist, sociopath thing. And those people are probably more tending to trend towards that area of the political spectrum. So I don't know. I don't... Are we I get what you're saying. I understand you're painting broadly. I do that all the time. Thank you for clarifying.
What I'm saying is
they're all NASA in disguise. They unironically believe that. A lot of flat earthers think that all other space programs are secretly just arms of NASA.
that NASA has been fabricated since minute one to basically keep this thing under wraps. The sun and the moon and the stars and the planets are just part of a light show. No different than if you went to a planetarium and looked up on the ceiling. I mean, the technology is much, much better. We've been doing planetariums since the 1970s. But can I remember, we've only had HD technology for the last...
This is something that I should bring up about Mark Sargent, which is interesting compared to a lot of flat earthers like Nathan Thompson. Many flat earthers have the flat earth thing as part of their biblical cosmology. Not all of them, but many of them, the ones that we have covered, hydrate. Many of them are, I don't know if I want to call them Christians. Not all of them are Christians, though some are, and it fits kind of next to their young earth creationism in their beliefs. Others have a general belief in a deity or a creator. Either way, it's a god figure that creates the flat earth, and that's why it is what it is. Mark Sargent, on the other hand, doesn't believe that. He thinks either aliens or advanced humans or like a secret society, something material that is not God, not by the capital G definition, is creating this illusion. I should point that out. It's notable. He is different in that aspect. He's not saying it's a God thing. In fact, he has compared it to the Truman Show, which is interesting.
20 years. Imagine what we could do in the
Is that
next
a listing
100.
for one of the
So
flat
whoever built this, way more
things?
advanced than us.
Wait, who built it?
Well, take your pick.
Aliens?
It's one of two things. It's either a highly advanced, either an advanced civilization. I don't like to call them aliens because I don't believe in that they come from Mars or Venus or Saturn. I think they're older versions of us. But if it's not some sort of advanced civilization, well...
Is he grifting? I talked about it. He doesn't sell these, I don't think. I could be wrong. When I had watched, like, the Behind the Curve documentary, another guy was doing them. I do not think he's actually involved in selling these. To my knowledge, could be wrong. A lot changes in a decade. But, they sell these at conventions.
Well,
usually.
then it's
Or the internet.
the divine, and one man's advanced tech is another man's deity, so take your pick.
So, but Mark, if this is indeed the case, why would so many people be in a conspiracy to convince us that the Earth is round?
Oh, he's not bullshitting on the spot. This is like the same. He goes over the same talking points a lot.
Why wouldn't we just go, okay,
In fact, I don't think he is good at improving. That's
well, the Earth-
one of the things where he gets slipped up, is when he has to go off script, he doesn't do quite as good of a job.
there's a dome?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, and that's a great question, because what we're talking about here, and by the way, I don't think that people had anything to do with this thing. All I'm saying is that the United States government and the Soviet Union figured this in about 1960. Even our best and brightest couldn't figure this out till about 1960. And then there comes the question. And I know you as journalists think, oh, you should tell the people. It's like, don't jump to conclusions, because there's three things that could happen. Potentially, all your academia would be turned upside down. All your physical sciences would have to be rebuilt from the ground up. Your world markets would have to be suspended.
I don't understand why he thinks the markets would crash based on this information. But in terms of science, similar to a lot of other flat earthers and conspiracy theories, they mischaracterize how science works. Science is not a process by which everyone is all moving in the same direction and agreeing with each other. Like, my wife just graduated with her PhD. Like, she's been in academia. Like, it is not a place where everyone gets along and everyone agrees. That's literally the point, is that people disagree with each other and try and prove each other wrong or come up with new understandings of things. That's the job, right? That's the job. If science was all about everyone always agreeing about things, then our understanding in science wouldn't ever change, right? Our understanding of the universe, of space, of our place in the universe has been revised and changed over time through science, because we have a greater and greater understanding as we're further able to test and observe the world around us. That's good. So, if the world was flat, there would be people out there who have personal incentive to reveal that. Like a ton of them. Like pretty much every scientist involved in any physical science.
For months to figure out where the dust settles. And then, of course, the 5 religious houses all of a sudden have an
The 5 religious houses?
advance over science. which they haven't for the last 5 centuries. That's a lot to take in for a civilization. I
But
don't think they're
science
gonna
moves
take that
on.
chance.
But Mike, science does move on. Science is the art of science is to look at something, break it down, see if it works, go in different theories. So why hasn't this been worked on before? And if what you're saying is true, then science will go, okay, let's prove this theory. If the theory proves true, then we all move on with the new theory.
Well, science takes care of its own. You got to remember, science, mainstream science, and I call it scientism at this
No,
point.
but it's not. Oh, he said scientism.
Because they've really turned science into its own religion. They put the rubber stamp on things they can't prove, like carbon dating, like the Big Bang Theory, like dark matter, like
These things are evidenced.
evolution, and so on and so on. But if science has been
Oh, he's anti-evolution too. I knew that, I'm sure, but I forgot.
pushing this for the last 5 centuries, they've got a vested interest.
I know, a lot of it is proxy for elites. I hate to do this. I always cite Dan Olson. I'm really, I'm giving him credit. Dan Olson says this shit, and it's, I think, accurate, his observation. How do I put this? Phoenix Leftist, thanks for gifting a sub. Is he an anti-vaxxer? I'm actually not sure. A lot of people who are conspiracy theorists, we know the typical stuff of the world being complicated and them wanting to simplify it, them wanting to conform their observations in the world today to their worldviews that previously existed, worldviews that might be out of date or incorrect on some things, and in order to prevent changing of their worldview, which would be difficult, they instead conform things to what they already believed through conspiracies. I don't know. Some of it is... It's a lot of the same grievances that the right has, and I think that's why you see such a marriage between conspiracy theorists and the right these days. They don't like people different than themselves. They don't like societal change. They don't respect or understand structural criticism or even how structures influence our lives. And instead of trying to expand their understanding of these things, they latch on to simpler narratives. People have this momentum, right? And by momentum, I mean things at rest tend to stay at rest. Mentally, psychologically, people do this. You will not change your opinion or views on something until you are pretty much forced to do so. You can work against this, and that's what people try to do with analytical thinking, is understand that and move past it and be able to accept things more readily. A lot of people don't do that because they're not taught, or they just don't have enough introspection. I don't know. So they end up hating people that they don't understand. Elites becomes a dog whistle for all sorts of things. And even they don't necessarily realize they're doing this, not all of them at least. To some extent, it's like, I don't like liberals, elites. They all stand in for an emotion somewhere in their head that they're being misserviced. Some of that's fed to them, some of that's based on their material needs not being met. Some of it's just straight up xenophobia, racism, homophobia. Either way, they're uncomfortable and they're looking for a story that makes their internal strife someone else's fault. That way they don't have to deal with it. Hydrate. Razor Girl Luna says, shakes fist at John Belushi, religious house! Phoenix Leftist, thanks for gifting a sub to the El Presidente.
In it from their institution standpoint. It's the foundation of everything that they are.
So
they're going to protect it at all costs.
Mark,
so I don't blame them.
In flat Earth theory, Antarctica is actually an ice wall at the edge of the Earth, and a group of people are planning an expedition there, I assume, to prove the theory, right?
Well, it's a nice idea, and I hate to burst your bubble, but that particular story was spawned from because we do Flat Earth conferences, and the conference in 2020 is actually going to be a cruise, but it's leaving out of Miami, and it's
There's sectarian conflict within the Flat Earth community. Some believe different things about the cosmology of the Flat Earth. These days, because there are fewer of them and fewer of them entering, they're kind of in an uneasy state of, like, working together and kind of like trying to tolerate each other's different views because there just aren't enough of them to even have sectarian conflict anymore. But back when Flat Earth was a bigger thing, there were bigger rivalries between groups that believed different things. And they'll call each other, you're a fake Flat Earther, you're a psyop, you're controlled opposition. No true Scotsman stuff.
just a recreational cruise. Some UK journalist decided to put his own spin on it and said, "Oh, wouldn't it be great if they turned it into an expedition?"
It would be.
So there is no planned expedition. I'm sorry. I hate to do that.
Surely,
to you.
now, let me ask another question then, Mark. Surely you're getting a lot of money off of YouTube hits and getting this out there and merchandise and gathering 6 million people. That's not a small amount of money if you're conducting a business and trying to put something out there. Couldn't you, like Tesla or somebody like that, conduct your own experiment by getting into a rocket, going up there and having a look for yourself, or
It will get like, I know they've already done the gimmicky like rocket thing where they're doing tests and taking different people up, William Shatner, etc. At some point they got to get around to like, we're gonna take a flat earther, right? That's gonna be a thing that some company thinks of to get clicks. Like, oh, we're gonna do another thing. Who are we gonna pick for a PR launch? Let's get a flat earther. Might even be Mark Sargent. He's actually pretty media friendly, relatively speaking. He did an advertisement. We'll go back to this interview, but this is brief. He did an advertisement for a gambling website some years ago. He's not one to shy against attention or money, which take that as you will.
Earth expert Mark Sargent thinks the moon landing was a hoax.
Technically, the moon itself is a hoax.
Right, but betting with Sportsbet's new iPhone app?
I could do this standing on my head.
Thanks, Gravity. Sportsbet's new iPhone app. It's foolproof.
Just saying. Interesting.
going to the ice
Well,
wall and see
okay.
if the walkers are there?
The expedition would be nice, absolutely. But the Antarctic Treaty, which is rock solid and not even up for debate until 2041, keeps just about any authorized expedition from happening. So we are stuck with the ground experiments. Long distance photography, lasers, weather balloons.
Some of the experiments that they've done in Behind the Curve showed that the Earth is round, so...
Take your pick. We do a lot of different
Is there downward bias? There's no downward bias!
experiments. But yes, the expedition would be nice. And as far as money goes, come on. You don't get into flat Earth to make money.
But you certainly stay in it to keep your job, don't you, Mark? Sorry, that's mean. I'm doing the thing. I'm falling back into just being mean instead of trying to say anything constructive or interesting.
In fact, I don't care about fame. I don't care about money. I just want to be right. And I don't make that much money off it yet.
I think you need to get bigger props. We have a much bigger prop than you, and therefore I think our theory is better than
You'd
yours.
be surprised how little people will sell themselves out for.
Okay. And again, if you don't, what I try to tell people is if you don't hate flat Earth when you first hear about it, there's probably something wrong with you. Everybody that got into flat Earth hated it. I tried to debunk it for 9 months, and that is, can you prove the globe in a court of law?
This is what scares me, by the way. One of the reasons I tell people, I've said this before and I stand by it, anyone can be susceptible to conspiracy theories. Anyone, at any point in time. Like, people have hard times, and cults and conspiracies pull people in because people have similar psychology, and we can become vulnerable to manipulation. It happens. But there's another reason on top of that that I don't usually say explicitly. And here's what it is. Because if I said, no, there are specific people who are more likely than others to get fooled by conspiracy theories, the problem is no one thinks they're that person. Mark doesn't think he's that person. No flat earther thinks they're that person. So you can't tell people, well, some people are more or less likely, even if that might statistically be true, because no one thinks they're the one on the low end of the bell curve for being manipulated. So no, everyone is susceptible because everyone thinks they're at the center of the bell curve at minimum. So if you assume that the only way for you to prove or disprove something is for you personally to be able to test and prove it, there are a lot of things you're not going to believe, because the modern world does not function off you being able to do every single thing and reconfirm every bit of science anyone in humanity has ever already figured out. It's not feasible. You gotta navigate the world and how you understand it sometimes through abstract trust relationships. That can be unnerving, but it's how the world works.
And can you do it without using a space agency? And eventually you are going to run out of threads to pull on, and the only place you're going to have left to turn is this. And by the way, that number, 6 million people, that is way lower than what you might think. I don't know where you get the 6 million from, but it's way
What would you
higher
say
than
the
that.
number is?
What is the number?
Oh God, it's got to be over 100 million at this point. We're massive. We before YouTube tore down
I
its
cannot believe he believes that. Like, you guys know how much I look into these conspiracies and stuff, and I am fully on board with recognizing that, like, there are a lot of people who believe conspiracies. Like, the other day, for instance, there was a study we looked at that showed 4% of Americans claim that they believe in reptilians. And of course, we talked about that in any self-reporting poll, there are people who are either going to not understand the question, think it's funny to answer yes even if it's no, and just, like, fill out randomly and not look. So there's always a level of that when you're looking at 4% of a thing. There's an element of that in there. But also, we saw someone who was covering that who said, I just straight up don't believe that. There are a lot of people who believe some silly things. But even I don't believe 100 million people believe flat Earth. No. 10 million? Okay. I could believe that. 100? Mm-mm. No. Mm-mm.
scoreboard. We were more popular than the
And
president.
I'm talking about people who have even thought about it. I'm sure there are people in the world who have never thought about it and don't have a conception of it or whatever. I think it's 10 million max, and that's being very generous.
Of the United States over here.
Worldwide. I'm saying worldwide.
When it came to metrics, we beat him in the middle of last summer.
Mark,
we were tracking higher.
we do have to
went
go
from
because Mark,
50,000
Mark, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but our satellite is going to cut you off, and I'm so sorry. If you come to Australia, let us know. Come on in, let's have a chat.
Yeah.
Glad
Thank
you're not
you,
a
Mark.
flat earther, Paley. That's good. Benigami says, apparently no one told Mark about Andreas Vesalius, the guy who literally upended 1,000 years of anatomy by asking the daring question, what if I dissected my own cadavers? The history of science is filled with groundbreaking, world-shaking discoveries happening, and mostly it's religious and political figures, not scientists, who try to bury them. Especially, again, see, whenever you, I always want to go off on diatribes to clarify things. True, but also a lot of the people in that time were, like, getting paid by the church to do things. Like, history's complicated. But yeah, historically, science has not usually been the thing to try and hide shit. No. Oh, that was it. That was the end of his interview. Lame. Moving on that one. Boo boop boop boo. He did a thing on a Jesse Lee Peterson thing, which sounds awful, but it was interesting. Oh, this is interesting. A lot of you might be familiar with the podcast You're Not So Smart. Here's Mark Sargent talking to one of the hosts.
No, it's fine.
Okay. I don't know if is this the correct way to do this? Very Swedish and very comfortable.
I'm looking at the stagehands, wondering if I picked the right spot. I think we're good.
So how are you, Mark?
I'm good. Tired.
Tired? I'm tired too. I didn't do what I was supposed to do. And sleep. I don't know if everyone here has seen the documentary Behind the Curve, but Mark is featured in that documentary. It's on Netflix. It follows you around. It turns you into more of a superstar than you already are. I can vouch that we spoke earlier, and you were a very smart, capable, decent, attractive man.
Oh.
But
I don't know where this was.
there's something in your biography that no one ever asks you about, and I want to start here.
Yeah.
Just to break the ice.
Yeah.
You used to be a pinball champion?
I used to play video games for a living. It's true.
Okay.
I started out, that was how my career started out. I was a sous chef at a Mediterranean restaurant in Seattle, and I won a computer pinball tournament back in, 94, long time ago, by a little company
Is this just like on his resume or something? I don't.
out of Tokyo called Little Wing. And the producer out of Boulder, Colorado, afterwards hired me as a ringer. So I traveled across the country.
You were a pinball ringer.
Well, just video game ringer in general. I just played whatever games they had, and I went to Macworld and San Fran and Macworld and Boston and E3 and stuff like that, and made the games look better than they were. And that's how I started out.
You made games.
Made the games look better than they were. That's a kind of a Billy Mitchell-esque statement, right? Okay, someone else caught it too.
better than they were.
Yes.
So, if I'm hearing you correctly, this planted one of many seeds in which you realized there are hidden forces at work, pulling the wool over people's eyes.
Yes.
And you were part of a conspiracy.
Yes, I was. I was part of a pinball conspiracy, a video game conspiracy, as it were.
That's a pretty cool gig. So you've already been famous once. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Where did you grow up? Did you grow up in Seattle?
I grew up north of Seattle, if anyone knows the Seattle area, up in the United States, a little rural island called Whidbey, W-H-I-D-B-E-Y. Very hard to get in trouble on Whidbey. Short of throwing rocks at cop cars, it was extremely tough to get in
Did you
trouble.
throw rocks at cop cars?
No, but we thought about it a lot. Yeah.
I'm not sure what to think here. Sort of a shadowy pinball champion, throwing
Yep.
rocks at cars, small town near Seattle.
Yep.
What were you into? I mean, what was your life before this? What was your career?
Well, you know, I'm older, so I know everyone here is super young and super attractive. But
That's just Scandinavia.
but growing up in the U.S. in the 80s was a little different. You know, you could, like, for example, you could go to university on basically money you found in your couch cushions. It was that easy. So no one really thought about the future that much. And we were just like, oh, let's just have fun. I mean, the 80s were just a big fun time. So, you know, I studied business administration. I was like one of the few people in my university to have a computer.
On some level, I respect the self-awareness to get that the 80s was like a big selfish like fest of like, let's not think about anything and how our consequences of our actions.
In their dorm
It's more self-aware than I expected him to be about that. Interesting.
room.
Although now
So-
I'm just flattering him because he conforms to a belief I have. He said something that fits into my worldview, so of course I'm going to credit him for that. Watch your own biases.
What was the early internet like? Was there? I mean, what I'm getting to here is how did you get into this conspiracy?
Oh, how did I get into it?
But before we get to the big one,
Yeah.
like there were, I was on the early internet like a lot of people were. And there were conspiracies everywhere.
Oh, yeah, America. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's America, right?
Yeah, we have the
So
best conspiracies,
yeah.
just so you know.
I have.
You know what? I'll say that. America is the conspiracy theory capital of the world. God bless America. Finally, we're number one in something other than school shootings.
The figures here. Let me. This is a good time to tell people this. In the United States, because you wouldn't know this because you're the most skeptical country in the world.
Yeah.
But in the United States, 60% of people believe that the JFK assassination was a conspiracy. 60%. So the majority of them.
Is it 60? I thought it had gone down to 40. I thought there was like it was low initially, then spiked throughout like the 70s, 80s, and then it started going down like after 9/11, I thought. Fuck. I don't know, could just be a different one than I've seen.
Americans.
Sure.
25%.
I get it, the JFK thing sucks. The JFK thing sucks, but first of all, if he hadn't been shot, you'd probably have come up with some other reason to hate him. He wasn't perfect, holy shit. But yeah, that just happened. It sucked. It sucked. It sucked. He got shot. He got shot by one guy. It's not a conspiracy other than the fact that that guy did it. He conspired to kill the president, and he did. He conspired with himself.
That Barack Obama is secretly a Muslim or a Kenyan or both.
Yep.
What's the... I genuinely don't know. In Kenya, what's the Muslim population? Are those two claims potentially in conflict with one another? I know, obviously, you could convert, and you could just be but I don't know.
25% believe 9/11 was an inside job.
Yep.
It's lower than I thought.
Quarter of the country. 21% think that the government is covering up alien contact.
Yep.
20% believe vaccines are a conspiracy in some form or another.
Yeah.
You're not in on
That's probably higher now. That's probably around... This was from 4 years ago. That's probably... I shouldn't guess. Let's take a look. I have a computer in front of me. Let's actually do a number instead of just pulling things out of my butt. What percent? Let's see. This is specifically about COVID vaccines, and it's 24%? That must have... Oh, God. Fifth. There's also a poll I saw that, like, a fifth of Zoomers are, like, skeptical of the history of the Holocaust. That's scary as shit. Yikes.
On that one? Okay, we'll get that.
Yeah,
10% think that fluoride is some sort of conspiracy.
yeah.
6% say the moon landing was faked. 5% say the airplanes
11% of Kenya is Muslim. Okay.
are producing chemtrails.
Right.
And
Of course, the claim in the first place is fucking absurd and based pretty much entirely off fucking racism and xenophobia and Islamophobia. Obama's not Muslim.
4% believe that the world is secretly controlled by reptile
Yeah, there's the
overlords.
4%.
Yeah.
Reptiles.
4%, and 4% is 12.3 million people.
In a country of like 320-something million people, I don't think that sounds that absurd. Like, it's a lot, but there are a lot of people who believe out there things.
Yeah.
It's the nature of outliers.
And let me throw a quick.
You are the expert. Tell me.
Well, no. Let me throw in a few more. We can talk about whatever you want, of course. I know we're going to be limited on time. But think of the ones that are out recently that, polarize our country even more. Like, just about every Democrat in the United States believes, and maybe some of you as well, that the Russians helped Donald Trump get elected.
Mm-hmm.
And
I hate that fucking framing. We objectively know that Cambridge Analytica did do work, and there were people trying to actively help promote Donald Trump. That's not a conspiracy. It's like they try and compare it to Trump trying to claim that votes were changed or added during the election. That's not what we are saying. No. People have been fucking convicted for this shit. There was an active push by certain entities, foreign and domestic, in order to push certain propaganda through social media channels to shape public opinion. Like, I'm not saying you have to care, but that is a reality of the situation.
and every Republican believes that Hillary Clinton had some sort of kill list. And just about everybody, doesn't buy that Jeffrey Epstein hung himself in that jail cell.
All right, and Pizzagate and QAnon.
Yeah, and Pizzagate and QAnon. There's all...
Pizzagate is particularly troubling because someone actually went to the supposed pizza parlor. I don't know if anyone here is privy.
I like how he said that because it implies maybe it's not a pizza parlor. No, it's a pizza parlor. It's a pizza parlor, and the allegations were supposed, and by supposed I mean not true.
Have you heard of Pizzagate? Okay. That scares me.
It's not my favorite, but go
It's
ahead.
not your favorite?
No.
Neither is, it is not mine either, Mark. So yeah, someone actually went to the pizza parlor and shot at people and had to be, taken to jail, and someone almost died because of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because they went there to see the ovens that supposedly Hillary Clinton was putting children in.
Right.
In the pizza parlor.
Right.
Yeah, we're in a very conspiratorial period of
Very.
time, and some would even say the President of the United States is a major conspiracy theorist. He was the person who made the birth certificate very popular.
Oh, yeah, the birthing thing. Yeah, where was
He
Obama
sort of-
born?
he
Yeah.
Sort of created birthers.
Yeah.
Okay, so when I read that list, before we get into this next question, when I read this list to you, do you believe all these? Do you think that some of these are questionable? If so, which ones?
No, I mean, I have an opinion. That was kind of how I got into what I got into now, which is I have an opinion on just about every conspiracy. I mean, in the United States,
Me too.
there are, as you read off, a ton of conspiracies, and a lot of people believe in them. And there's also what I like to call approved conspiracies. On top of all those on the list, the things that the media will talk about, but of course they don't use the word conspiracy, they usually use the word scandal. So the Enron scandal, it's fine, it was a
The difference between conspiracies and conspiracy theories, interesting. It almost feels like, and language isn't prescriptive. You can't just say, here's a new word for this thing. It's inherently pretty grassroots. But it's unhelpful that in English, The word for conspiracy is the same as the word basically for conspiracy theory, because a conspiracy theory is a very different thing, colloquially speaking, than an actual real-life conspiracy that happened, like a legal conspiracy, or even colloquially what we would consider a real conspiracy. I talked about this the other day. For me, there's no great definition, but for me, the difference is that a conspiracy theory, in this sense, in the tinfoil sense, in the untrue sense, the things that you associate with, you know, quote-unquote crazy people, which is a pretty ableist thing, but, like, that's often how society views it. Even though that's often not the case. People are just... It might be a malfunction of how they're thinking, but there's a lot of stigma around it, and that doesn't help people get better. Anyway, what I was trying to say was, if I can remember, I'm gonna drink. For me, a conspiracy theory is more about the way you came to the conclusion than it is the conclusion itself. You could, in theory, make a conspiracy theory that is true, if that makes sense, but it would still be a conspiracy theory because the way you got there was wrong, and your thinking is not something that can be broadened to further elucidate issues in the future. So let me give you an example. This is sort of a parable, I guess. Imagine that you are visiting your grandparents on a farm. Imagine your grandparents live on a farm. And your grandpa asks your grandma to look outside and see if the cow is in the field or in the barn. Now, your grandma has bad eyesight. She looks out there and she sees cow shape. Looks vaguely cow-shaped to her. She sees cow fur pattern. She goes, yeah, the cow's out in the field. You go out there and you look, and it turns out what she was looking at was a large, I don't know, cow print rug that's drying, and behind that is the actual cow. Now, was she right that the cow was in the field? Yeah. But she was right for the wrong reasons. She was accidentally right. What we're talking about with conspiracy theories isn't so much the end result, but how they got there, if that makes sense. So yes, conspiracy theories broadly are false, because the way people get there are false, and usually, when you have false, like, tools to get to the conclusion's going to be wrong, but broken clocks can be right. Just bear that in mind when you're thinking about conspiracies. It's less about the actual belief, but how one came to that belief, and what the belief is about. Tea with Goblins with 36 months says, 3 years of terrific trans twitching over tinfoil temerity and terrible, tiresome tyrants tweeting twaddle. Thank you, Hannah and Stannis. Thank you. That is, 3 years and a sub-baby. This sub-baby's name is, Juggalore! The ultimate circus baby.
Massive conspiracy, of course, but they don't like using that. And if somebody dies, they call it a tragedy. Very few times will they actually use the word conspiracy, but that's why I
Unless it's an actual conspiracy. Conspiracy is a thing, but it's different than the thing you're talking about.
call them approved conspiracies.
Mm-hmm. So are there any of these sort of mainstream
yeah. I mean, there's quite a few of them. That I mean, again, but you don't want me to go down those
what I'm
rabbit
interested in as a first real question here, after we've established our happies and our report, I want to know, are there any of these mainstream conspiracy theories that you are skeptical of?
Sure, but not necessarily skeptical of as much as I'm not a fan. Meaning, there, as far as my list of priorities, conspiracies that mean anything to me, there's a whole bunch that I just don't. Well, since what I'm into now, I don't really care. They're all been bumped down to second or third tier. Mm-hmm. For me, a conspiracy carries weight if. I hate to do this to you guys because I'm not your normal conspiracy guy. I kind of flip on the other side and I say, okay, I look at it in the terms of why and would I do it if I was them? The greater good question. When you get to a certain level of power, you do things for the greater good. You make decisions that the general population doesn't get a chance to make. And so would I make those decisions? So in a lot of the cases, yeah, but that's how I weigh them. You know,
see, that's interesting to be self-aware about that, because it has been shown in studies. We actually saw this in a talk given by Rob Brotherton, author of Suspicious Minds, a psychologist, a doctorate who does studies on conspiracy theories and the psychology of them, and there was a big element of projection in conspiracy theories. If you're the kind of person who gets asked, for instance, on a survey, on a psychological survey or a test, which was the case here, would you be willing to participate in the moon landing conspiracy? Like, if it was 1960 something, whenever they got started on that. Wait, whatever. We choose to go to the moon, you know. Whenever NASA was founded, and at some point they decide, we're going to fake the moon landing, and they come to you and ask you to do it, would you do it? That question and many others were asked, would you participate in this conspiracy or that conspiracy if you were asked to? People who said yes were more likely to believe in conspiracy theories. People project their intent and beliefs and morals outwardly. We assume that people act like us. We try to understand others who are different than us, hopefully, but there is always that bias where we take our internal state, what we would do, and project that outwards. So, if you are the kind of person who is more likely to participate in a conspiracy, someone who, if you were given the opportunity and power, would use that power to deceive people, you are more likely to believe that there are people in power now using that power to deceive. Now, there's always truth in that. We know about the whole power corrupting and or revealing thing. But, I don't know. Certainly not for the moon landing. And not for everything.
JFK, for example.
You're with the JFK seems reasonable to you.
Well, JFK was the first conspiracy I got into. If you guys don't know, well, if you follow
they have to know.
Well, yeah. No. I mean, how it got introduced really to the American public in mass was, of course, the Oliver Stone movie,
oh, yeah, for
JFK,
sure, yeah.
in the early 90s. And that literally was, I mean, I grew up on a rural island, and I was naive about everything. I literally thought that nobody lied ever about anything. Why would someone in authority, why would a politician lie? Why would a corporation lie? It's like, you know, it was the 80s. And then when I saw...
I wasn't alive in the 80s. I can't speak to that. That sounds weird. In the 80s, like, even stuff like media that was satirizing the 80s, in the 80s, understood that there was a greed, like, lying problem, right? Like, yeah, I'm thinking like Gordon Gekko type shit. Like, that's a satire of something currently happening. Like, look at... I don't even know how to express that. Maybe it's just because he was a child that he believes that, and he's attributing it to the 80s? But it's just that he was a child? Like, people knew people lied in the 80s. Especially politicians. Nixon had happened. Interesting. Profane Priestess says, breaking news, would love if you'd read out the thread, but the long and short is that Alex Jones has been ordered to liquidate his assets to pay the debts he owes the Sandy Hook families. He will, as I understand it, not retain the IP, wealth, or assets necessary to maintain InfoWars. Let's see. Sandy Hook families decide to liquidate Alex Jones's assets to settle the $1.5 billion defamation judgment against him. The families of Sandy Hook school shootings, the families of Sandy Hook school shooting victims have overwhelmingly voted in favor of a plan to conclude Alex Jones's bankruptcy proceedings by liquidating the assets of the right-wing talk show host. Jones's general unsecured creditors, primarily Sandy Hook families holding... Sorry, it expanded. Boop, boop, boo. Jones's general unsecured creditors, primarily Sandy Hook families holding an approximate $1.5 billion in defamation judgments against him, unanimously supported the Chapter 11 plan. This plan aims to systemically liquidate and distribute Jones's property and cash while preserving potential legal actions against entities affiliated with Jones and his InfoWars program. An official committee representing Jones's unsecured creditors informed the U.S. Bankruptcy Court for the Southern District of Texas on February 16th that out of the 23 liquidation plan ballots distributed, 21 were returned, all in favor of the committee's liquidation proposal. The vote reflected the creditors' preference over an alternative plan submitted by Jones, which seeks to reorganize by preserving parts of his media empire and offering the group at least $5.5 million annually over a 10-year period. Jones's plan proposes additional creditor recoveries from disposable income generated by his bankruptcy's InfoWars parent company, portions of his personal income, and the sale of various personal assets. While no ballot tabulation for Jones's plan has been submitted to the court yet, a plan approval hearing is scheduled for late March. Jones filed Chapter 11 protection in December 2022 after facing state court judgments for repeatedly claiming that the 2012 elementary school massacre was a hoax. Bankruptcy judge Christopher Lopez ruled last year that Jones cannot discharge the defamation awards due to intentional and malicious conduct. Jones is represented by Crow and Dunn Levy PC and Jordan Oritz PC, while the creditors committee is represented by Atkins Group, Strauss, Hauer, and Feld LLP. The case is in R.E. Alexander E. I didn't know anything about that shit, so I can't speak to that. That's good, though. Fuck that guy. Seriously, he sucks. Like, even he gets hired elsewhere, is he still on the hook for all that? I hope so. I hope every day of the rest of his life, he never does work that isn't directly paid to those people. He sucks.
Saw JFK in the theater like on opening weekend, packed house, and everyone left there. I mean, yeah, of course now you've got the stats, but back then, you know, everyone that left that theater was pretty ticked.
Sure.
At the time, why not? But did I agree with yeah, do I believe in the JFK conspiracy? Sure. I mean, come on, a lone gunman that was then killed by a lone gunman. Come on.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I believed in the why. I understood the why. Which was
there's that example of the proportionality bias. Big events must have big causes in people's heads. A president was shot. It had to be a giant conspiracy. And the shooter of the president was also shot. That also has to be an even bigger conspiracy. Sometimes stuff just happens. That's why you need evidence. Like, I get it. It's fair to be like, that's weird. That's fine. But you can't fill that feeling of that's weird with a bunch of hypotheticals that you then self-confirm by referring to your own, like, feeling of unease. You just feeling like this is sus and having a vibe is not evidence.
Yeah, I'll tell you guys, why not? We're family, right? Which is, but he was a long if you want to know why, in my opinion, why JFK was taken out was because, I'm not trying to be casual when I say this, he was a long-term problem, which was he was killed in 63. If he isn't assassinated in 63, what happens in 64? He's reelected. He goes from 64 to 68, and then, of course, Robert comes in 68 to 72, and then 72 to 76.
Wow, you're assuming a lot that Robert, like, I don't know. I know the Kennedys were a political fucking dynasty, but the assumption that Robert would have immediately gone in and been the next president is a leap.
And by that time, we may have forgiven Ted for his sins, Ted Kennedy, who ended up being a senator forever. And so, you know, he was a long-term problem. And so I looked and I was like, okay, if you're the military-industrial complex, do you make that move? Yeah, I probably would.
I understand.
Sorry, I hate to say it.
What I'm wondering, though, is the reptile overlords thing.
No, I'm not a fan of reptile overlords. Okay, let's do stuff that's not even on there. Do I believe that Elvis is still around? No. Do I believe necessarily in the Pizzagate thing? Not as much. It's not my favorite.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of them, you know. I say sure, why not? But you got to remember what I'm into now. Flat Earth.
Yeah, we're gonna get there.
Yeah, what I'm into now means that I can't judge anyone. I literally, if I start my day with that, how can I look at somebody when somebody says, "Oh yeah, by the way, I know a guy who says that Bigfoot had Elvis's baby." Beforehand, I'd be like, "Get out of here." But now I'm like, "Yeah, I'll give you 2 minutes, sure."
This is why I was asking these questions. This is what I was leading you into, and I'm sure you realize that. I've never spoken to someone who believes in the flat Earth conspiracy theory, or I don't even know if that's even offensive to you to call it a conspiracy theory. But
we called it a theory. Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I was wondering how someone. This would be a very grand conspiracy, and I was wondering if you had skepticism toward the other conspiracies that are kind of grand, like the reptilian thing, or even Elvis can be considered way off the charts. And I'm assuming you have a different sort of empathy toward people who are believers of those things. You don't just completely disregard
I do.
Okay, I'd like to hear more about that.
I do. I mean, you know, I hang out in conspiracy circles. I do conferences, and everyone that goes to these conferences, it's, you know, it's not just one thing. They have, you know, that list, and which is really interesting because most of them, if you want to rate them, you know, it's like, okay, what's the top 25 in order of importance? They all have completely different lists, and they debate them at length at these conferences. And I absolutely have empathy for them. Because, you know, I know, and there again, I'm a little different because I put myself on the other side of the chessboard. But for them, because I know the question is, you know, how do people get into conspiracy theories? Why do they get into conspiracy theories? And most of the time when I look at them, it comes down to a simple, maybe I'm oversimplifying it when I say good and evil, right and wrong. Everybody wants to be the white hats, but you can't wear the white hat unless there's some black hats. And if there aren't any immediately in front of you, you're going to find them. You know.
I'm trying to get a read. I really am. Because what he's saying there is true. That's absolutely true. That is a thing in conspiracies. People want to bring a clear right and wrong order into the world and place themselves in the role of good. Because the world is complicated and gray, and that's not something we like. But I'm confused. I guess I shouldn't be. People can understand that and still not have that reflection about their own thing. People have blind spots about their own stuff. But again, I'm telling you, like, it feels like he knows this isn't true to some extent. That's an opinion. That's a vibe I get. I don't know. It feels like he hit it big, and I fully believe he started all this believing that the flat earth stuff was true. I don't know if he does anymore. I don't know if he does, but he doesn't know what to do, because this is all he's ever had, other than, like, the pinball stuff, which is great, but, like, I don't think it was doing anything for him around the time that he started doing this. I don't know.
But was he saying, you know, when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail type of thing? And that's where, you know, a lot of it comes from. But at the same time, we all know there's real deception out there, and so the lines get blurred, and that's where it starts for him.
Well, how did you? I mean, you seem to have a very cogent view of how conspiratorial thinking works.
Yeah.
How did you find yourself in this flat Earth stuff? Like, what is the story?
Oh, because
what is the origin story of how this happened?
Yeah. The origin story was, you know, starting with, you know, again, I'm not the traditional guy where, you know, I pull the drapes and I hide in darkness and I think about how sinister everything is. But I had an opinion, like I said, on just about every conspiracy you can think of, to where I basically ran out of conspiracies, you know, interesting things to look at.
You say you're like an aficionado of conspiracy.
Yeah. I mean, again...
You're just into it.
Yeah. I like some, I didn't like others, but I'm also a huge movie fan. I'm a huge media guy. I absorb so much media, to where conspiracies are just part of that media, to where...
He does this a lot, too. He does reasoning by, like... He'll reference something. I talked about this before. He'll use, like, the Truman Show to explain how he thinks the world works. And I understand that. You guys know that I will often use movies and other media to express something, like a parable, to explain a situation in a way that people might understand, as cultural touchstones. The difference is, conspiracy theorists believe that the world... Oh, God, I'm trying so hard to be more nuanced with this. Often within conspiratorial narratives, the overarching rule is narrative in nature. They treat the world as if there is a fundamental force of narrative satisfaction that rules how the world works. And that's not good, because you can't apply the rules of a story to the real world and use that as an argument, because when you do, it's going to fall apart, because the world doesn't work like a movie. Like, people's incentives are not aligned with the incentives of a writer trying to write a satisfying story for an audience. The world's full of a lot of individual people writing their own stories and kind of cameoing in each other's, you know?
I got bored. I mean, back in 2014, I honestly thought I'd basically finished the entire conspiracy library. And then I thought, okay, well, there is one thing that's on my bucket list that I probably shouldn't look into. But you know what, it's on my bucket list, and I'm not getting any younger, so let's do it. And that's when I clicked on the first one. It was made by a guy in Germany. I think his YouTube channel was called Cesar.
CAESAR, and he was talking about flight routes in the southern hemisphere. And what was interesting was, I don't know if they talked about this in the documentary, was when I clicked on it. And remember, I'm living by myself in Boulder, Colorado, and there was nobody else with me. And I remember getting a visceral response to clicking on the video. I got actually emotionally flushed, which was weird. You know, if you're on the internet, you've all clicked on some really weird stuff out there. You shouldn't be clicking on, pages come up. Nothing really embarrassed me, but this did.
Nothing embarrassed? I've been embarrassed.
Well, I mean, no, there's stuff, it's like, oh, that's kind of gross.
He makes it sound like he was, like, flat curious. You know what I mean? Like, he's ashamed of it, but he was interested. It's like he was denying himself something. It's very strange. I've never heard a conspiracy theorist describe stuff like this before. I've heard him tell this story, of course, but I've never heard anyone else describe it quite like this.
But the rest of it was okay. I mean, it never embarrassed me. I mean, like, physically, I've never got actually flushed. And that's what happened when I looked at this.
Why this? Why of all things?
Well, that was just it. That's what I wanted to know.
You wanted to know too.
I was very, very curious. And then of course I said, well, okay, you know, I got past that initial reaction. I will try to shoot this down. Yeah. Everybody in the community that I'm in, every single one of them tries to kill it. Everybody says it's the dumbest thing ever. No one should ever look at it. And one of the quotes I have that I put in the book was, every day I wake up and I try to destroy flat Earth, and every day I fail. And I try all the time. And that's how we started. And so I tried, you know, there wasn't as much content out there. So I tried for about 9 months, from summer of 2014 all the way up until about February of 2015. And then I did the dumbest thing ever. I said, okay, internet hive mind, because all you guys I know are pillars of intellectual prowess. I said, show me where I'm wrong. And I made a series of videos called the Flat Earth Clues, and
that's the thing that made him huge. Jesus Christ. 500,000 fucking views.
I put it out there. I said, you know, with, of course, all my contact information, which is super smart to do. You know, give my name, my
it's been
email.
Mirrored everywhere, by the way, too, so all the views aren't even on that video.
My phone number, my physical address, my bank account numbers, routing numbers, and passport number. And I put out there and I said, show me where I'm wrong. And I thought that some intellectual would call me up and blow the thing just out of the water immediately.
He's been debunked many times, including live. He just doesn't change his view, which again isn't uncommon for conspiracy theorists. But he doesn't even usually generally address it. This is where I get the liar vibe, or the grifting vibe, is because usually they'll at least try and come up with some argument to fight against the criticisms. Like when he says, I wish people would come and tell me how I was wrong. Happens all the time. What has happened in the larger Flat Earth community since 2017, since he stopped, you know, he helped kick off the stuff and he was a big figure, but he kind of faded in the background at some point. He started it, but he did not remain the prominent one. Other people in the community started refuting, or at least attempting to refute, the refutations of Flat Earth, which built and led to, like in a lot of conspiracies, a deep mythology of answers to try and explain away the reality that they're wrong. So usually they engage with that stuff. I've never seen Mark do that. Mark doesn't engage with any of that. It's like he's still doing the same exact content from the video he put out 9 years ago, completely disregarding most of the things that have happened in the Flat Earth community since then. It just feels like he wants to be the Flat Earth media guy, when the news or a documentary wants to call a guy who's a Flat Earther to have some weird piece about, oh, did you know there are weird Flat Earthers? He wants to be the guy they call. I think he believed Flat Earth at one point. I think he believed it when he made his videos. I don't know if he does these days. I just think he likes being the media Flat Earth guy. I think he likes going to conventions. I don't know. Again, this is all speculative. This is just my opinion. It's just the vibe I get. Why is he the star today? 9-year anniversary of his Flat Earth Clues video going up. H-Beard says, as a professional scientist, we don't get paid to explain things to YouTubers. In fact, we don't even go to YouTube for scientific information, if you can believe it. You know? Have you considered that he's the main character, though? And everyone should drop everything to talk to him? I have to use the bathroom. I'll be right back. Here, Cher will tell you about their favorite movie, The Kid with X-Ray Eyes, starring Robert Cardine and Justin Bierfield from Malcolm in the Middle. Is that visible? It's a demonstrative. It's important for Cher. Yeah, you got that. There you go. Take it away, Cher. Tune in again for my next pee break when Cher reviews their least favorite movie. The Crazy Sitter.
And instead it was the opposite. People just started calling for, I mean, forget about the media and just general people. It was the subject matter experts that blew me away. All the people from all branches of the military and surveyors and engineers and pilots. In fact, one from KLM.
When a person like this would reach out to you, what was it like? What would they say?
Oh yeah, it was always kind of like this weird hesitation where they would say, you know what? That's not the craziest thing I've ever heard, and here's why. I was completely unsolicited. If I ever live long enough to write an autobiography, that's what it'll be called.
But pilots would do this.
Yeah. The pilots would do it. They say, you know what? Everything we look at, it was from the front of the plane. They go, yeah, everything we see is, this flat horizon that, always rises at eye level and all the other things.
Commercial airliners don't go high enough generally for that. Concords aren't a thing anymore.
And it's weird because there's this paradox, they would say. It's like, we all know, of course, it's a globe, right? It's a globe. But what we see, the pilots see, is not. Mm-hmm. And they said, we're going to, always the same thing. It's like, they wanted to talk about...
You're not high enough in a commercial airplane to see the curve of the Earth.
They wanted to research it more, which, of course, is the overarching theme. And again, I don't know how much time we have, but the overarching theme of our groups is, look, don't take my word for it. Just do your own research and ask questions. I didn't even...
There it is. Do your own research. Don't do your own research. Don't do that. Please, trust experts in their fields, because they did research that they are trained to do, because they know how to do that and check their work.
When I made the clues, they were not hard. They included no math, no physics, no engineering.
And they're wrong. Some of them are just outright lies. Like, he says that there are no flights between two places in the southern hemisphere. There are. They're rare, but they exist.
It was just, okay, connect the dots. Here's where I think it leads.
The reason they're rare, by the way, is because, A, safety reasons, because going over open ocean with no places to land for long periods of time is a liability issue, and no one wants to crash into the ocean. And secondly, commercial airlines, surprise, surprise, are a for-profit business, and there isn't enough commercial interest to go to two places in the southern hemisphere, so usually you have to do connecting flights.
and then it just kept getting reinforced and reinforced and reinforced to where now we're on tour.
What kind of research do conspiracy theorists even do apart from Google and Facebook groups? That's about it. Just internet stuff, BitChute, Rumble, the usual suspects.
My 4th thing I'm doing this year. I still have 3 conferences to go.
How many countries have you been to? What kind of, like, just
how
recently?
Like, okay,
Not
like
how
this
many,
year?
Just name some countries you've been to.
Oh my God. Okay, we'll just do this year. We did Calgary, a conference in Calgary, Los Angeles, Auckland, and UK. Which, like, tomorrow I'm flying out to UK, and then we're doing South Carolina and Dallas, Texas. But yeah, and this. So yeah, it's gotten really, really weird.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard to explain. It just keeps. It's just this steamrolling thing that just drags me along.
So there's a big society now, and your videos are getting like millions of views. It's interesting. It's you reached out to the stage, and then that you were brought onto the stage, basically.
Yeah.
Funding the globetrotting of Marx. I mean, this is his job. He gets paid to go speak at like flat Earth events. I don't know if he's written a book or anything, but he does the YouTube thing. He's done podcasts.
And so it's
in particular, the show that he's on right now is a show that is not a flat Earth show. The person interviewing him is not a flat earther. It's a podcast that talks about all sorts of things people are wrong about. It's a podcast called You Are Not So Smart. So they're not here to agree with him as much as just trying to understand his whole deal.
it's a story a lot of people have when it comes to
I assume they paid for his travel at minimum.
finding stuff on the internet and then becoming part of internet culture. Yeah. Like you have become a celebrity for a new era. How most people do.
Yeah. But I did everything to not make that happen. I mean, you guys don't know. I mean, when I built my YouTube channel, I literally turned off likes and dislikes and comments, and didn't monetize anything for at least the first 6 months. And then finally Google reached out to me and said, hey, you know what? You might want to turn on monetization because you're getting quite a few hits. I honestly didn't pay attention. I was just waiting for the phone calls and or emails. But yeah, the internet built this. Yeah, social media is a fertile ground.
It was interesting to me that you discovered this through YouTube, and then I'm assuming the algorithms probably fed you more information, and you started to get sort of locked into, maybe you haven't seen this video, but you should. Yeah. And then that became an exploratory thing, which would be like research. Yeah. And you started to build a case for this emotional reaction you had to that first video. Yeah. And then when you put out your own, it spread that emotional reaction to other people, and they would do something similar. And so the community is being built algorithmically at the same time that you're putting effort into building the community, and now you're having conferences around the world. And
yeah, and it got easier as we went along because, as you know, everything on the internet sticks. So as more content, when I was doing the videos, there wasn't that much content out there, but people made more and more content along those lines. They all started it with the same journey. It's like, I hate this. This is the most terrible thing ever. I'm going to disprove it. And when they started going into it,
but not the case necessarily, by the way. A lot of them will tell that story, but I've not heard that from every single one. Sometimes they're like, no, I always thought something was weird or off. Hans is one of those people. Fenekagami says, a conspiracy I'm partial to is that the Netanyahu administration knew... I'm not even going to read that.
Got inspired and made more videos.
I'm not engaging in conspiracy
So after the first
about
18
current
months, if you got into it,
events.
there was this wall of content that was out there. It was massive. And
especially ones I don't know nearly enough about.
And then it shocked. There was a shock and awe where people were like, wait, when they got into it, it's like, oh, I'll do a search for flat Earth and just. It's like, what? It was like a secret corner of the internet you didn't know existed, and it just appeared within, a calendar year.
Yeah, that's another thing that makes this really fascinating to me is that this is a very young conspiratorial community.
Oh yeah.
I think you started, what, 2015, 14?
Oh, yeah, I'm one of the oldest in it, and I've been doing it 4 years.
So it's something I don't think could have occurred. I mean, this happens naturally throughout human history, but this quickly and
you're fine, I'm just telling you where my line is. I don't want to get bogged down. I don't want to get bogged down in that shit. Because there's like, on Tinfoil Tuesdays, I've looked at, there is conspiratorial content out there, like I've said, about about that, and I try to avoid it, just cause holy fucking shit. Like, let me put it this way: I try to talk about conspiracies broadly as a phenomenon psychologically, and if we talk about something that is current and everyone here, or most people here, have strong emotional feelings about, myself included, we will be prone to not looking at that conspiracy or belief or anything in a objective way, as close as we can ever get to it. No one's ever objective. I'm not lying to myself, but like, I don't think I could accurately and fairly assess that belief with this situation, and certainly not with the information I have currently. It's just a lot. It's just easier to deal with things that we aren't, upset about.
Being a audience member to being the person creating the audience in just a couple years, that is something that really is a testament to a sea change in how media works.
It's one of the reasons, too, that I try and avoid, like, I occasionally cover, like, transvestigation conspiracies and stuff, but not a ton. I do it, even if I do it, it'll be, like, one per stream, if that. Just because, like, I have a limit, and once I get to that limit, I know I can't be semi-professional anymore. Anyway, I'm done talking about it.
Yeah. Social media and 6 billion smartphones have changed everything. It is incredibly fast.
What do you think would have if it hadn't have been for just social media? Let's say you had found this in the library, you'd read it in a book, and it was
According to him, he used to say he did read it in a book. I don't know where this thing came where you initially saw it on YouTube, but in the documentary and other places earlier, I've seen him say that he got a gift of a book from a friend, right? So I don't know if the story changed or what.
It was the 80s, as you said.
Lou is right here and Cass is there. Oh, bye, Cass.
Oh yeah, there's nothing you could do.
Yeah.
I mean, well, if you're going to use that, I'll use the example of people have been, especially in our country, people have been suspicious of the American space program ever since it happened. Ever since they shut it down. The moon missions in 1972, But what are you going to do? I mean, the best that anyone could hope for was like maybe show up at like a UFO convention and pass out some photographs, some Xerox copies of things. There was nothing connected to anybody. And so, like when the internet first came on, all the old conspiracies, the older ones, got new life breathed into them.
I'm not sure if it was specifically zetetic astronomy or a different one.
It was like anything else. You find out, there are people outside of my hometown who are into this, and now we can form a community.
Hey.
There's two aspects of that I wanted to ask you about before I ask you some specifics about what this actually is all about.
Sure.
You mentioned in the documentary, and I don't know why, this just rang in my head ever since.
Yeah.
Once you become a flat earther, you can only date other flat earthers.
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah, they tried to do a dating app at some point. I don't think it worked out.
There's flat earth dating apps. There's a whole flat earth social thing happening out there. Yeah, because the paradigm is so huge.
Have you been on that app?
No, I haven't. but I didn't have to either, because...
Oh, of course not.
Well, no, yeah. No, because...
He's the Sigma male in the flat earth community?
Well, seriously, I'm just not kidding you. When I would show up at conferences, I would run into people, some wonderful women over the last 4 years. They would be like, oh yeah, I'm into this. Want to know more about you, and we
I'm sorry, is he just bragging about all the people who hit on him at conventions?
Are doing stuff, and so yeah, but everyone kind of says the same thing, because there are marriages have failed because of this. People, relationships have been destroyed because of this.
Why is that?
Because it's such a huge, overarching paradigm shift that if your spouse or significant other or whatever isn't into it, there's an impasse there. Something's got to give, and so that just fails sometimes.
But the same.
I've seen this both with Flat Earth and QAnon. Any conspiracy that gets this big, like there are a lot of people who believe one or two or, a few, like people who believe in like Bigfoot or they think alien abduction is a thing, but it doesn't have a broad impact on their overall worldview. They're still able to get up every day and be fine and function and interact with other people, and sure, everyone's suspicious of like power and the government to one extent or another, filtered through our own personal biases, but like, they're functional. When you're talking about something, when you're really into like flat earth, it requires your worldview to be one where there are puppet masters, where basically every event in the world is orchestrated. And that's really hard to deal with on a day-to-day basis. That's to the point where it becomes a hindrance to your ability to function. And that's separate from, like, you know, people who just have one or two eccentric beliefs, which is common. That's not bad, as long as it's not harmful or hateful, you know? If you have an uncle or spouse or someone who's just, like, into UFOs, like, keep an eye on it. You don't want them to slip into magical thinking, but it's not inherently going to lead to some complete divorce from reality. This, though, this takes over everything. This takes over your whole worldview.
In the same way that you can find your community, though, you can find a partner who'd be into it. So, like, you shed this, like, it's another internet phenomenon where because of this new resource, you can find someone who would be okay with these beliefs, these new beliefs, these very young beliefs that have come into your life.
Yeah, yeah. It's a strange world to live in. Again, it's so young, and we try to do all, you know, we're basically in uncharted territory every month. We just keep doing what we're doing, but most of us don't even know exactly why we're doing it, other than we're inspired to do it, inspired to you know, to spread the word. And I know that kind of sounds like a pseudo religion.
It's like, I think you grab the back of a train here, and you're
Pretty evangelical as a belief.
being
Peter, yeah, or an amusement park ride, where it's, for me especially, it just came along and it's like, okay.
Harold Ebbelman says, as of right now, the cable isn't working. Mom thinks they're trying to keep her from the national news. Who are they? The local cable monopoly. And their motive? I don't know. Just to irritate our assholes, I guess. Keep an eye on that. Again, especially as people get older, I don't know, there seems to be a tendency towards more paranoia. I think some of that has to do with the tendency and correlation between ambiguity and ambivalence and feelings of confusion or not understanding, leading to more paranoia, which leads to conspiracy thinking. So I think as you get older and the world changes around you, you probably become more susceptible to that kind of thing. But keep an eye on it, because that might also lead to her getting sucked into conspiracies to use her politically. People like Donald Trump, Fox News, use this kind of thing and say, like, you're paranoid, things are weird, things are different, don't worry. It's not just how the world is. There are evil people doing this to you.
I'll go where it leads, wherever it's going.
One other question about this. I mean, what about your friends and family? How do they treat this? Is your social group all made of people who are in, like, flat
No.
earth?
I mean, it's very, well, yeah, my friends are all on board. However, family is mixed. It's a pretty even split. Most of our community is in the closet. You know, if the gay community is 50% in the closet, then the flat earth community is 90% in the closet. And
Not thrilled with that comparison, but whatever. Beanie Flower, thanks for following.
I know this because I get emails all the time, mostly because they're afraid of the standard stuff, you know, being ostracized by friends, family, or coworkers. And they, you know, mostly coworkers. That's always the big one. It's like family they can deal with, friends they can deal with, but you have to go to work every day, or maybe you don't, and you know you don't want to catch that sort of grief. So for me, it's the same sort of thing. I have cousins that are into it that will not come out. I've got, you know, people that hate it. You know, my sister just loathes it. She just absolutely, especially since the documentary came out, because she couldn't escape it at that point. Because once it hit Netflix, there were people emailing her saying, "Oh, I saw your brother. Oh, I saw your brother." Yeah, she didn't want to hear that. That was a bad
I can imagine.
Yeah.
It's like joining a religious faith that you don't agree with, or something that it's a belief system. That's the thing that makes this fascinating. And as far as psychology is concerned, a belief is a belief is a belief, neurologically, biologically.
Sure.
So that's why I want to.
That's a good way to put it. I hadn't even thought about it like that. Yes, that's what I was trying to illustrate earlier with the parable about the cow, and that conspiracy isn't about what you believe, but why you believe it. Yes, perfect. Your brains believe things for different reasons. The reasons are the things that matter, not what you believe, because your brain doesn't care if something's true or not. Your brain doesn't know if something's true or not, necessarily. It's your brain. They're processing beliefs. How you're processing it is what's important.
What you actually do believe, or as we would say in the business, your claims.
Right.
So I'm going to get into this, and if we, I'm not really watching the time, so somebody might have to grab my.
Who has the time?
My ankle. I've got it right here.
Who do we watch?
So, very simple questions.
Yep.
No judgment here. I'm just interested.
Oh, ask.
Seriously.
I've heard it.
Okay.
I got yelled at by a lot of drunk people in Dublin 2 days ago. So I was doing street activism in Dublin and Belfast.
Wait. Street activism.
Oh my God, yes. Well, in the UK, it's a big thing. There is street activism. People get so pumped up about this that they will set up banners and hand out leaflets on the streets.
Flat Earth.
Yeah, absolutely. And they invited me because the conference is in the UK. They said, "Hey, would you mind traveling on part of our tour to some of these cities and do street activism?" And I said, "Sure, why not? What's the worst that could happen to go to Belfast and Dublin and set up banners and,
Bad things could happen.
and hand out stuff and have guys stagger up to you and say, 'What?'" So yeah, so I did that.
How did it go?
It went actually really well. It was surprising how many people knew who we were.
Yeah.
And from different countries. That was weird. When we were in Dublin, we had people from who'd seen the documentary or watched something on the internet.
Yeah, the street evangelism for
South
Flat Earth happens all the time. Back when this was really popular, it was a huge thing. Nathan Thompson, who we used to cover, did it a lot before he went underground because he allegedly stole a bunch of money from other flat earthers, and he, got kind of pushed out of the community at large, allegedly. Yeah, going out in public places and trying to teach people about Flat Earth was huge.
Africa, Australia, Bolivia, some schoolgirls from
a lot of Flat Earth stuff is anti-Semitic. A lot of conspiracies are anti-Semitic. It's the bedrock of, I'm not big on the whole Jungian collective unconscious thing, but if I did, I would say that a lot of, conspiratorial thought has bedrocks that are grounded in anti-Semitic beliefs, unfortunately.
France, a bunch of Americans. I mean, we had at least, 10 dozen people that showed up and took selfies because they knew us in a really short amount of time, if that gives you any idea.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a excuse me.
No.
It's a worldwide
Yeah,
movement.
worldwide.
So, what is the Earth really?
What is the Earth?
What is the Earth?
All right, I'll give you the short version real fast. So, mainstream science will say that you live here. Ooh, props.
You have a prop.
Mainstream science. There's science, Mark. There's science, and then there's pseudoscience.
No, right?
I was not aware of this.
I have two
This was
props.
not cleared by security.
No, we didn't script this. That you live on a little rock flying through space in multiple directions.
I'm sorry, I'm blanking. Who coined the term pseudoscience?
Possibly huge universe, and that you're insignificant.
It was used to describe Freud. Was it Lacan? He fucking did not like Freud.
And you don't mean anything. We say differently.
No, it was another one. It wasn't. Who was it? Who fucking coined pseudoscience? Someone Google it.
We say that you live in a flat enclosed system, like the ancient cosmologies have said.
The implication that all ancient cosmologies are the same is wild, too. He's cherry-picking cosmologies that vaguely fit into something like this, and then assuming, or just ignoring all the ones that don't.
Years and years, centuries ago, if not millennia ago. And that there may be nothing outside of this, all the stars and the sun and the moon.
I don't think that's who I was thinking of, Miss Hire, but maybe I'm just thinking of... 1 second. Give me a sec. Maybe I'm wrong. No, because it was later. I'm thinking of someone who used it in regard to, let's see. Karl Popper. I was thinking of Popper. Sorry. I was thinking about Popper and his criticisms of Freud and comparing when he was trying to explain the difference between what Einstein's theory of relativity and why it holds up, as opposed to Freud's work, which was not... How do I put this? Not as empirical. That's what I was thinking of.
are on the inside, and you are incredibly significant. You are incredibly important, incredibly special. There's a theme there. But there's a catch. And again, every flat earther, which might attach to some of your questions, which is, do all flat earthers agree on exactly what this looks like, the dimensions and all the fundamentals of it, and the physics and the engineering? No, not at all. There's massive dissension in the ranks. However, what everyone can agree on, which is why I use that Scottish Highlands reference, everyone in the flat earth community, again, can agree on one thing. It's like,
H. Baird says ancient Judaism believed God spoke the world into existence, while the ancient Egyptians believed the god Ptah pleasured himself in order to create the cosmos. Basically the same.
it's not this.
Nope, nope, I have a joke in my head. I'm gonna save it. It's mine. It's not yours. It's my joke. No one else hears it.
There's something wrong with this. There are way more, you're a big writer.
What does he think other planets are? Projections. He thinks that the dome, like a planetarium type projector, is used on it by someone in order to give the illusion of a night sky.
There's way more plot holes in this than there is this. And if you know what, I'm getting ahead of myself as far as why.
Where is the flat Earth at? Mark Sargent is non-committal on that, to my knowledge. He pretty much will be like, I don't know, who knows? Which, like, is a fair answer if we were in a dome like that and we had no observation outside of it. Sure, saying we don't know is fair, but he's already gone out on a limb and talking about other bullshit. So to me, it just comes off as non-committal because, as I said, flat Earth has a lot of sectarian conflict within it. So I think he's trying to remain a palatable public flat earth figure for conventions by not pissing off any of the factions, by being like, I don't know, who knows, you know? That way he doesn't say, oh, I think it goes on forever, or I think it's the waters above in the Genesis Old Testament sense, or I think it's alien observers, or I think it is Satan, like whatever. Whatever it is, he doesn't want to say, because then he would alienate some of the flat earthers who would disagree with him.
That resonates.
You have the stage. Go for it.
Do you think that do you think I use my hands enough when I talk? Beanie Flower with a first-time chat. Good to see you here. Hope you're liking the stream so far. Says, what flat earthers never have a good explanation for is why the evil puppet masters would bother to set up a fake sky. Why would we expect one if we only ever had the dome? It's a good point. It's a good point. I think part of it has to do with the fact that conspiracy theorists are very invested in symbols and magical thinking. So they almost work backwards. I feel like to them, they're trying to explain away observations of the world. So in order to do so, they have to look at the night sky and say it's fake, because the reality of it, as it is actually observed, shows that their worldview is incorrect. So instead, they just have to vaguely say, it must be fake, because if it were true, my worldview would be wrong. It's kind of an argument from consequences in a way. It's them reverse engineering the world so that they can believe what they want to believe, because reality is unpalatable to their psychology for some reason. At least that's my view.
Okay, well, why it resonates? Why am I doing so many?
Like most things, it's nuanced. There's a lot of reasons people believe in conspiracy theories. It's a cluster. It's clusters of things. It's not one or two things, but that is an aspect. Is people wanting to explain away realities they don't like, simplifying things, feeling important, finding a community. There's all sorts of things.
Conferences. Why am I even here? Why did I just do that television commercial in Australia? Why all these things? Because we've now created a way of explaining this that's easier than this. And you're saying, well, yeah, but that doesn't mean that it's right. I'm just going, well, Sun Tzu, The Art of War, people are like water. They always take the path of least resistance.
Again, it's almost like he's tipping his hat to the fact that he knows that this is bullshit. He understands the psychological thing happening here, that, again, one of these things in these clusters of behaviors, beliefs, etc., is people like simple explanations. Complex, nuanced answers people don't like very much. They're not fun, they're not snappy, they're not easy. People don't like that. Generally, again. Generally. So Flat Earth gives them something simple that they understand. It's wrong, but they understand it. That disgusts me. Nope, 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 nope. Losing objectivity here. Losing it, losing it, losing it. I'm concerned that it seems that he is aware of this and is using it as if it means anything to his argument. All he's saying is, well, yeah, I might be wrong, but I can convince people. That seems to be an admission that you know what you're saying is wrong. Or at the very least that you think it doesn't matter what the reality of the situation is. What matters is what you can convince people of, which is an incredibly dangerous worldview. DM Trey says, part of me feels like part of it is their desire to discover. In a world constructed by complex lies, they have the opportunity to discover a lost world of simpler truths. Yeah.
They always will go.
I'm allowed to not be objective? No, I'm allowed. I just try and keep myself from getting in a place where I'm just ranting because I am in my feelings about something.
For the easier thing, and because of that, it has resonated. We use very little mathematics, very few physics, although we do memorize a lot of basic things.
No, the speed of light in a vacuum isn't a render distance. I assume that's what you're implying there. Sorry.
And that's how we see it.
I find simulation theory so interesting because they basically just reinvented Plato's cave allegory. But like they're like, but totes, bro, have you seen The Matrix? I'm being reductive. I'm being snarky, I'm sorry.
I hear what you're saying,
Okay.
that it's simpler, but it doesn't seem simpler to me. It seems very complicated.
Well, of course.
Because the first thing that makes this complicated to me is
I actually want to talk about this a little bit. Give me a sec. Oh, here's I have another documentary I need to pull up. So another documentary that is about delusional conspiracy beliefs is A Glitch in the Matrix. I haven't actually opened this yet because I watched it on streaming and bought it. I haven't watched the Blu-ray yet. Would recommend. It's by the same documentary filmmaker who did that documentary about people who have all sorts of really insane conspiracy theories about Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. The people who believe that he put in moon landing hoax clues. Anyway, good movie. Would recommend. Watch it on streaming or wherever if you can. I don't know if the Blu-ray's still in stock. It was a pretty limited run, I think. Anyway, humans like allegories. Humans like to explain things by comparing them to other things. The problem is, things aren't other things. They share aspects, but they're not one-to-one. A Glitch in the Matrix is the name of it. Again, someone asked. For instance, historically, the human mind has been compared to a great many different things. Like, the brain has been compared, or the body functioning has been compared to things like aqueducts. Like, when aqueducts were a very, very height of technology, people were like, it's all about the fucking humors. Everything's about the goddamn humors. We need to get things from places from one to another. People use analogies, but those analogies are never complete. So when people try and say, like, your brain's like a computer, so everything's like a simulation, okay, you're applying the entirety of the analogy of a computer or programming to something that is not that. It's analogous in some ways, but not all of them, and you're applying all of them as if we are literally in a simulation. I don't know. I've always found simulation conspiracy to just be lazy. It feels lazy to me. It just feels like, whoa, bro, what if you were a brain in a jar? Or what if we were all simulations? Yeah. No. No. And it wouldn't matter if we were. Just how I feel about it. Also, if I'm a brain in a jar, please bring me more brain flakes. I assume it's like a fish tank.
that seems like it's something that isn't naturally formed by the laws of physics.
I'm
It
glad
seems-
you're not a chud simulation theory person. To be clear, I respect you as a person, even though you are maybe a conspiracy theorist. That's fine. I didn't want you to think I'm being, well, I guess it's not up to me to decide if I'm being a dick. I wasn't trying to be a dick. Just wanted to point out.
Absolutely, one of our points, by the way. Oh, and let me throw this in here really quick.
Okay.
I don't want to jump around too much, but one of the big things, and again, I don't know the denominations of this room, but at least half of our members, at least in the States and most in the UK, are hardcore Christian. And so the cosmology, and they have latched on to the King James Bible in a big, big way, and gone through it with a fine-tooth comb and said, well, basically the Bible is a flat earth book, with the exception of maybe one verse. And because of that, yeah.
I don't like when the Bible gets used in regard to this because it falls into that category of biblical literalism that isn't just a belief that, like, the stories that are supposed to be literal are literal, but that take the poetry literally. The Bible, a lot of it is poetic because it is a cultural and religious touchstone for countless people historically. It was scripture that has been translated many, many times, but still the intent was often poetic, especially in those early Genesis chapters that he's referencing here, or the early Genesis story, like in Genesis 1, where they're describing the firmament. Is it Genesis 1? Early in Genesis. It's on like the first 2 pages. They describe the firmament. And again, I'm not religious, but I can find interest in that. I find mythology and different, like, cosmological, mythical beliefs interesting, but that's what it is. It's poetry. Different societies have had very different tellings and ways of describing how they thought the origin of the universe or the world is, because to humans, the Earth was the universe as far as we knew for most of history, you know? I don't know, it just makes me sad when people take the depth and breadth of beautiful, creative mythology in the world and try and boil it down to, no, like, it's literal, though. This is, like, for reals, bro.
Yes, what you were saying. This is not any sort of, it looks, built, it looks constructed, and that's our point. Which is, okay, well, if it was built, then it was built by someone. And whether you believe it's some ancient civilization that's much older and more powerful than yourself, or Santa Claus in a bathrobe, you're really kind of splitting hairs.
You're saying it could be gods or aliens that are like gods.
Exactly. Did God make it, or did God subcontract out the work?
I thought the Bible said that there were 4 corners of the earth, so it would be like.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, in most of the models, as a matter of fact, because as you know, machines have a really hard time. Machines think really in squares. They don't. It's hard for a machine to think in circles. Most of the
That didn't really mean anything, did it? The fuck does that mean?
big models of this would be this sitting on some sort of squarish.
Yeah,
thing.
I don't even know, like, what he thinks that means. I'm pretty good at being a conspiracy theory whisperer and understanding what they're trying to say when they don't communicate well. But I didn't get that one. Is he trying to say computers are strictly math and analytical and don't have that human magic? Like, I don't quite get what he's saying.
But it's not as easy.
But you don't believe it's a square shape. It is a disc.
Oh, might be. Well, I mean, on the outsides it might be a square, but this part that we're living on is a disc.
And why the dome? Why? What is this purpose?
Oh, why do you have a dome?
Because I've seen models that don't include the dome.
Okay. Well, good point. You've done some research here. In our community, maybe 70% of our community believe in the domed model, and another 30%, which is not a small percentage, believe that there is no dome, that it's an infinite plane. But most of the people believe that for a reason that they don't like being fenced in. They feel claustrophobic. But the dome from...
Again, he's recognizing people using motivated thinking. It's so interesting, our own blind spots. Like, I'm sure I've done things before that people have been like, what are you talking about? You're projecting. Obviously, everyone does that, but like, what the fuck?
Physics standpoint works way, way better.
And how is the math handled where if you're on an airplane and I go this way, which the way I understand it, you go around the planet to get where you're going and it'll be faster than going this way.
Right.
How does that handled with this model?
Oh, no, it's good. And so, people, first off, they say, how do you circumnavigate? If you take off in one...
I'm sorry, did the podcaster just imply that the reason that flying one way versus the other is faster is because of the spin of the Earth? It's because of the jet stream. That's inaccurate. Just want to point that out. Fact check. That's because of the jet stream, not because of the rotation of the Earth.
One direction, people have done it in planes, right? And you come back and you come back to the other direction. If you take your finger on a dinner plate and you move it around the outside rim, technically, and you come back to the same spot, technically you've circumnavigated that plate, but it's not a globe, it's not a sphere, it's not a ball.
But wouldn't I'm not judging, but I'm saying it seems to me if you were doing that as a pilot, you'd see the edge the whole time you're making the circle, right? Like,
oh, you mean like if you're on the outer edge?
yeah.
Well,
Like,
sure, but then that goes into a whole other thing of the Antarctic Treaty. And again, I don't know how many people have watched my Flat Earth Clues or even watched the Behind the Curve documentary, but the Antarctic Treaty was one of the things that kind of pushed me, the tipping point for me, which is...
this is the Treaty of Nations to lay claim to the...
Antarctica is the only treaty, the Antarctic Treaty is the only treaty that's never been broken in the history of mankind.
That's definitely not true.
No one can go down there.
You can absolutely go down there. You can go book a cruise. If you're qualified and get hired to go work at a research base, yeah, you can. People work there. Not a ton. It's a tundra. It's a desert. It's a frozen wasteland. You will die.
Other than military science.
No one can...
Military, no. Literally, do you know what the Antarctic Treaty literally says that they can't, have weapons there and stuff. At best, you have military making sure no one's going, dangerous places, but they don't have, Did you even read the goddamn treaty? Part of this was to keep people from trying to, claim land there and build missile silos. That's...
mine it, or...
It's similar to the space treaty that's supposed to be hey, don't put nuclear weapons in space.
The what?
Claim it. Yeah.
I mean, if you're a corporation, let's say you're British Petroleum, you cannot set up shop there.
Although I think some people are
Good?
starting to lay claim to certain areas.
Well, claims is one thing, but corporation-wise, you can't send anyone down there.
Good.
I mean, and I get it. When I was, again, if I would have done the same thing...
that wouldn't even be practical. Even if I was BP or something, I'm just trying to think about it. You would have to build all of the infrastructure. Oh my god. There gotta be easier places to get oil than that, even if I don't give a shit about the environment.
And by the way, there's another premise to this, in that the best and brightest people, we didn't even detect this thing. We had the maps, but we didn't even have the technology to prove it out to the
They just don't think the North Pole is real.
military and the governments until about 1960.
When people go to the North Pole and take pictures and stuff, they just think it's all fake, and they take you somewhere fake in Alaska or Canada or something. That's what I've heard.
When we had, decent airplanes.
So it was constructed.
Right.
It didn't form naturally.
Right.
Is this floating through space, or is it
That's interesting, Lennon Cap.
hoisted upon something? How is it?
Why there doesn't have to be space. That's their thing. If all the stars are on the inside, that could be it, which is also another one of our points, which makes it easier, which is these things seem to be the exact same size or roughly the same size, same mass. You could hold the same amount of people, except that this cannot exist on its own. This needs a whole bunch of things to support it. It needs a sun, it needs the solar system, it needs a galaxy around that, and a universe around that, not to mention geometry and trigonometry and calculus and quantum mechanics. This...
You don't need to know quantum mechanics to know the Earth is round.
That's it. That's all you need. In fact, who'd say there are 7 billion people living in that thing right now?
What's on the bottom?
The what?
Just because you're not asking questions about the flat Earth thing doesn't mean there aren't questions there. Your thing would need to be justified just as much. You're just refusing to do so.
What's on the bottom side of it?
Oh, on this, it's a coin. No. This was made by an Italian company. They just called me.
No,
up
I'm talking about the actual flat Earth. What's on the bottom?
We don't know. I mean, what's the core of the Earth, for example? Deep. Little quick thing for you guys, may or may not know, and that is the deep. If you believe in this, then you believe that the core of the Earth is 4,000 miles straight down, give or take. And we've all seen the cross sections in the science labs. Red and orange and yellow and
in
white.
the science labs. You mean in high school? In high school earth science class?
That white creamy center. Deepest hole ever drilled was by the Germans and the Soviets, 8 miles, 12 kilometers.
Right, so...
Yes, they're not claiming to know because they literally drilled into it. They use seismic tools in order to learn things about the Earth and its composition.
this brings up an interesting point. There are many mysteries of the universe to which we have only a few pieces of evidence so far. We don't have the tools, or perhaps we haven't done the work yet.
Yeah.
I think there is a conception that in something like the flat Earth, that the people who believe this have an answer for absolutely everything. But if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying that there is a lot of room for mystery within this model as well.
Oh yeah, we don't have. I mean, I've been doing this 4 years. So we don't have the answers. Not even close.
So how did people figure out that it was flat? I mean, what were the
okay.
What were the clues that led to this? If you don't have the answers to everything,
We don't have I can tell you it's a good one. Which is, again, for anyone here, can I prove this to you in a court of law right now? No, I can't. But
I don't know if he thinks math is fake as much as he just doesn't trust people claiming that the math that shows the Earth is round is true. Like, I don't think he disagrees with lift or anything being a thing. But also, I get vibes that he isn't as into this as he claims, and he just does it for attention, so I don't know.
I create so much reasonable doubt in this that you have nowhere left to turn but to some sort of model like that.
He's actually only been doing this 9 years. That's actually why we're doing this today, because it's like 9 years since he started doing this.
Yeah, I can. Do it all day long. And that is why, if you want, again, why it resonates the way it does. That is one.
This is interesting to me for a lot of reasons. This, the reasonable doubt thing you're talking about.
They don't believe in gravity.
It seems to me that you've created a very high degree, a very high standard of proof for the globe model.
Yes, very high.
And it's not immediately apparent to me that you are holding the flat Earth to that same degree of proof.
Well, the science community tries to do that, but you got to remember,
the science committee
are really young by comparison. This has been out there for better part of 5 centuries, whereas this is the new.
He believes that the Earth being round is only 500 years old, in terms of people who figured that out. Oh no, he's going with the Columbus thing. He's doing the pop cultural Columbus myth. Oh no.
New version of this, we call ourselves basically Flat Earth 2.0, whereas the old societies would be like 1.0. We're still, working through it.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I want to I don't want to misrepresent you in any way.
Yeah.
It's just a myth started by Washington Irving. What's next? You're going to tell me that the ghosts of Prussian soldiers aren't doling out justice in turn of the century America? Why do I make jokes that no one gets?
You're sort of leaving it.
What am I doing?
This is a very old model.
What do I think jokes are
this
for?
This is a very young one.
Yep.
And this is, to you, just a new hypothesis that you're putting out there into the mix.
Yeah.
That can be tested scientifically like any other hypothesis.
Yeah.
And how, to the best of your understanding, has it stood
land,
up
that's
to
enough.
that testing so
I'll take
far?
it.
Really, really well.
They make me look smart. See, I don't like that, though. Then I'm just pretentious. Then I'm a pretentious asshole. And I meant Hessian anyway, so I got it wrong. See? It backfires. It backfires.
I'll give you a quick 5-point breakdown.
Okay.
Which is, because we've had to come up with our own tests, and science has challenged us with our own tests. So there's a German, and you guys might know it better than I. There's a German television company network out there called ZF1, and they contacted me because I put a challenge. I go, give me somebody in astrophysics. Give me somebody with a master's or PhD in something that I can talk to. And they found a guy out of Georgetown. And they said, okay, what we're going to do, because we don't want you guys talking over each other. We want to make this compartmentalized. We're going to have you record 5 quick questions, and we're going to take that video and play it for him, and he's going to respond, and we're going to go back and forth. You guys will probably not actually talk to each other at all, maybe. So they go, you start. And so I gave him 5 quick points, and I won't break them all down for you just because of time. But the first one would be long-distance photography, that you can see way farther with HD cameras than you can.
No, long-distance photography is done from high elevations generally, which these people always ignore. They say you shouldn't be able to see this far from ground level, ignoring that they're not generally at ground level, like not where they're shooting. They're up on a high elevation compared to where they're shooting.
Than you should be able to, because of the curvature of the Earth with its 8 inches per mile squared. The second one would be gravity versus the vacuum of space. How does the vacuum of space not rip off our atmosphere entirely?
The 9.8 meters per second squared accelerating upward thing actually isn't very popular among flat earthers. It's been spread a lot because there was a meme website that was making fun of flat earthers called the Flat Earth Society that had that as part of their website. But broadly, that is not popular amongst flat earthers. They usually explain gravity by saying it's buoyancy. Now, to you and me, you would know, oh, in order to have direction out, like a vector in buoyancy, like you need gravity. Gravity is part of the equation for measuring buoyancy. Like you need to know the gravitational constant in order to calculate buoyancy. Doesn't matter. They ignore that. They just think buoyancy is a thing in and of itself that can exist separate from gravity.
Which I've got some great arguments for. I'm not going to get into this second. Eclipse shadow, too small. The blackout zone is 70 miles wide on a 2,000 mile wide object, but yet we don't see the same thing when the Earth is in front of the sun. And the moon temperature, which I thought was just a bizarre thing that was came up with by somebody else, which the moon actually generates its own cold light, up to 13 degrees Fahrenheit colder than moon shade, which shouldn't be possible.
Radiative cooling.
And
Again, you've heard these debunk. I'm more interested in his mentality
and which
than
doesn't
the actual false information he's giving. I've debunked that many times, as have countless other people.
of course prove a flat Earth, but it does absolutely destroy the relationship between the sun and the moon.
No, it doesn't. That's not how thermodynamics works. Yeah, they believe in cold light. It's not true. It's a misunderstanding of radiative cooling and bad experimental design.
And last but not least, the Van Allen radiation belts, which is the Van Allen radiation belts, which were announced by NASA in 1959. If they're so,
he does make some good points. He really doesn't. Like, if you think he does, I'm. Oh, you fucking got me. Had me in the first half. God damn it, you got me. Fuck yeah.
Deadly, then how did the Americans get through?
I'll take the L on that one. I was hook, line, and sinker. I thought you were for real.
Round trips with aluminum shielding. Things can stop radiation: gold, lead, and a whole bunch of water. And you can't put those on any capsules. Nobody died. Nobody got cancer. There's still 5.
Again, there is a higher instance of cancer for people who have been to space. Yep. Radiation exposure will do that.
I'm walking around today. So, and I fired off those 5 points, and he folded like a card table immediately.
Who did?
The guy at Georgetown.
I've seen the thing he's talking about. He did not fold immediately.
Oh.
And he folded, and that was it. ZF1 got really bent out of shape, and they said, oh, crap, and they couldn't run the segment, and that was it. I still have the thing recorded on my channel as far as the interview with me and ZF1 as they were, like, setting it up.
Yeah.
They just didn't play it because he was
You know,
owned.
I hear what you're saying. I've heard some of these before, but not all of them. Some of them are new.
Yeah.
You know, there's a when you move into the like rhetoric and philosophy, they talk about putting things into context, and this isn't. I feel like we're moving into the context of we have to choose what epistemology we're going to like stick to make sense of things, and to take this and move it into as a competing hypothesis with other hypotheses, you have to disregard a lot of testimonies from researchers and from astronomy going all the way back to the Greeks, and you have to disregard a lot of stuff.
Yes.
And
and throw out a whole bunch of new stuff as well.
Correct. And there's also photographic evidence that has to be explained in some way or another. I guess what I'm interested here is, like, you know, we could all be in a simulation, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like,
As a matter of fact, I'm a huge simulation guy, by the way.
Right, so that's...
Simulation theory is up there with, like, solipsism for me, in terms of things that just make me roll my goddamn eyes. Not a fan. Hydrate.
When you throw something like that out, it makes nothing
impossible.
Nothing's impossible. But to have any reasonable scientific discussion, we have to say
you have to stay away from simulations.
You don't have to stay away from it, but you have to say...
I've heard... I would put simulation theory similar to... I've heard... I'm sorry for the nomenclature here, but I've heard solipsism described as philosophical self-deletion, let's say. Feels the same way to me. At that point, you're basically throwing your hands up and saying, there's no way to know what anything is, because everything's fake anyway. Like, at that point, what are you even doing? You're just basically giving up on thinking.
We're using some standard by which to determine whether or not we have confidence in something.
Right.
So, like, when it comes to, let's say, the flat Earth, from like 0 to 100, what would you say your confidence level is that the Earth is flat?
Extremely high.
Is it 100% or is it?
Well, it can't be 100%, but I'd say 99.
So, if you were to see evidence,
Oh, I'd quit. I'd quit in a second.
you would quit.
Absolutely
So
quit.
you're willing
I don't think that's true.
to give up this belief if you were found compelling evidence.
Which is different from the documentary, and I know Daniel, and I know they spun that at the
In the documentary, some of the flat earthers did an experiment where basically they did an actual experiment and demonstrated the curve of the Earth. So that's funny. Like, you know?
end. But no, I've told people all the time, I go, look, I will quit this thing tomorrow if you can blow it away. And that's what I was asking for in the beginning. I literally wanted somebody call me up from MIT, or Harvard, or Yale, or Oxford, or whatever else is out there, and say,
You're a random guy on the internet. At best, you get people like me, who are snarky communicators on the internet. The idea that you're gonna get a call from some fucking Ivy League tenured professor to correct your internet mistake is just so egotistical and bizarre.
say, look, shoot it down. Tell me where I went wrong.
So how would a person go about figuring out, like, what to you do you consider reasonable when it comes to testing this? You know, because there are people who have presented tests and said, it fails my test, and I'm
Right.
assuming you disagree with them.
Right.
What do you consider to be a good
Are there
way
any
to-
tests that could get me out of flat Earth right now?
Just how does a person go about figuring what is and is not true? I mean,
Just in general, what is and what is not true, or,
Yeah,
or
I
just
mean-
with this?
because apparently the methods we're using don't apply very well to this, or for some reason there's some reason you don't trust the current evidence that's out there as being worthwhile.
Right. Well, the American space program was easier for us because remember, Apollo was in doubt way before this. I mean, Apollo was doubt in the 1970s. So by the time this came around, every doubt that anyone ever had about the
Weird
American
that the USSR didn't bring that up despite the whole, Cold War thing. I'm gonna use the bathroom, be right back. Chair will tell you about, their medium favorite movie, Sylvester Stallone and Estelle Getty in Stop or My Mom Will Shoot. What else do I have right here? There's a whole box of jokes here. So let's see. Night Beast, Barbarians, The Tingler, The Pit, Good Night Mommy, The Dirt Bike Kid. This is stuff people have sent me over a long period of time that I haven't shelved yet. I collected it all. Talk about that one. Big Business and Scenes from a Mall. The Time Guardian. Comedy of Terrors. Dogs. Boris Karloff in The Ape. Food Fight. We're caught up. There you go. Ah. The chair must be a film studies major. No, they're just not animate, so they have to spend all their time in this room with my movies, and I think it's just a process of osmosis. The movies, just like the information of them seeps into the chair's consciousness.
American space program was then, reinvigorated. So that was the first thing that everybody goes after, which is you have to dismiss basically the entire space program. I mean, and yes, it's not hard to do. I could show you a random shot from Apollo 12, put it up on screen, and I'd say, look, I see at least 6 things wrong with this. How many do you see? The point is you shouldn't see any. So why aren't...
Are you so confident in your own faculties and knowledge that you think that you know what a rocket launch should look like? How would you know that? If all rocket launches were fake, then why do you think you would know what a real one looked like? I don't even understand the thought. Again, a lot of conspiratorial thinking isn't built on affirmative evidence of their belief. It's built on suspicion. It's built on, I have a vibe. That looks wrong. That feels wrong. I don't think that's right. And then they find stories and explanations to fill that suspicion.
Are they there? And then once, you have to go after the space programs first because a lot of people lean on that.
I've not watched Love, Simon yet. It's right... the slip cover right here. Oh, here it is. Not watched it yet. Do have it, though. Thank you.
However, I will put this to you guys. There was a great line by...
Holy shit, you know what I did watch the other day, though? Infinity Pool. Holy shit. I am a huge Cronenberg fan. I love David Cronenberg. And then I find out he has a fucking son that's putting out incredible movies. If you're a fan of David Cronenberg and you have not seen his son's work, I've only seen Infinity Pool yet, but it was great. Go see Infinity Pool. Wherever it's streaming, I'm not sure. I'm gonna look into his other work too, but Infinity Pool was just great.
By George Orwell.
Yeah, Mia Goth is a wonderful actress. And also involved in a lawsuit. Don't know how that's gonna go, but she's a good actress.
Great line from 1946 when he wrote it in the Tribune. And he's not a flat earther, right? But he wrote, he was talking...
It is body horror, by the way, so if you're not into body horror, don't watch it. But if you're a Cronenberg fan, please watch Brandon Cronenberg's Infinity Pool.
About the responsibility of science, because we all take everything that science says for granted. We just do. If you wear a white lab coat,
but it's not meant for granted. Although the lab coat thing, he's referencing an actual thing. People have, or had, it's probably not as good these days considering how much distrust people have in institutions, for some good reasons and some bad reasons. But historically, yes, there's that lab coat effect, where if you see someone in a uniform, you're more likely to trust them. That doesn't mean that they're lying to you, though.
Walk around, massive amounts of credibility. So he said, you could go to anyone in the street and ask them how they know the
Possessor? Okay.
world is a globe. And their first answer will always be the same. It's like, well, what are you talking about? We all know. It is known, Game of Thrones. It's a given. Right? It's a given. We all know. And then you push them on it. And he said this. He goes, you go, really, how do you know? And then they start getting angry because they realize they don't. Remember, this was 1946. How did everybody in the world in 1946 know it was a globe? NASA.
How does anyone know anything that they don't directly observe? They're abstract trust relationships we have with others. And that's not a bad thing. We are a social species. Our communication and understanding and ability to share things with each other, knowledge, ideas, this is what have made us so successful as a species. This is not a fault. It's not a bug. It's a feature. It's a feature that can malfunction. Not everyone takes it seriously and in good faith. It's fair to be skeptical. It's not fair to be distrustful just because everyone believes something.
It wasn't founded until 1958. How did everybody know this?
Mark thinks that NASA is in control of every global, not intentional pun, of every global space agency, including the Russian space agency, during the Cold War. Not joking. Again, he thinks this is part of a bigger overarching them conspiracy. He's not clear on who he thinks them are, but he does think it's an overall puppet master conspiracy.
It wasn't because you knew, it's because you were told. That model had been in...
And this is a big sticking point for you, the idea that I feel like you're the kind of person, and I've met many...
The only reason I know, like, long division is because I was told. I probably wouldn't have figured that shit out on my own. Like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah,
like this.
well, yeah, that's how we work as a species.
And I think it's fantastic that you would rather...
Who do other flat earthers think them is? Sometimes with people like Nathan Thompson, it's anti-Semitic. Sometimes it's a broader mysterious cabal that includes like Freemasons, Illuminati, other imagined enemies. Sometimes it's just elites broadly. The Catholic Church is sometimes involved. What matters is that it's about in-group, out-group behavior. It's about us versus them, good and bad, evil and goodness. And they are on the side of goodness fighting evil.
Do your own research in one way or another. That
Yes.
You want to see for yourself.
Yes,
And it's difficult to trust whoever these people may be, even if they are people in lab coats.
I'm a big believer of...
Oh, I watched Dream Scenario last night too with Nicolas Cage. I enjoyed that. That was interesting.
science, but I think that
If you haven't seen it, maybe check it out.
science has kind of jumped the rails and jumped into what I call scientism, to where they just assume it's like, whatever we say, people are going to buy.
No, you idiot. Sorry, nope, back it up. I'm getting personal, Sorry, frustrated.
One of my favorite quotes is from Neil deGrasse Tyson, and I put this in my usual presentations, which is, he came out and he said, science is true whether or not you believe in it. And I thought that was one of the most arrogant things I've ever heard, which makes...
Mark. What he is saying is not that anything a scientist says is objectively true. He is saying that if things are found to be evidenced and aren't falsified, they are falsifiable, but continue to not be falsified, then it's fair to assume that our understanding is good, at least as good as it can be for now. Scientific conclusions are always tentative, as all conclusions should be to some extent or another. It's not saying it's a religious doctrine being handed down. It's a recognition that there are people whose entire job and field of study exists to look into things. You and I don't have the time to do it. So it's fair to give that job to those people. Like, it would be like me going into, like, a McDonald's and being like, I would like a cheeseburger, but I don't trust you know how to make a cheeseburger at McDonald's, which, insert McDonald's is bad jokes. I know, I'm just picking a random restaurant. So I actually need to go make the burger myself. Like, no, that's not your job. Or, like, if we were on a plane and I was like, I don't trust this pilot to fly the plane. I need to fly the plane. Like, no, we have jobs in society. We train for jobs. I just...
Basically means, you know, if we say that it's a fact, it's a fact. Mm-hmm. It's like, yeah.
No, it's that if it passes the muster of this process, then it is the best explanation we have currently.
Until the day it isn't. Science is wrong about lots of things all the
And what proves it wrong, Mark? Is it people like you, or is it other scientists checking other scientists?
time.
This is a self-correcting mechanism. And if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying that you're totally down with the scientific method. It's the
scientific method. We do it all the time.
It's the scientific institution that you find most of your mistrust.
Yeah.
And that if you could apply the scientific method to this model and it turns up it's not a great model, you'd be willing to give it up.
Absolutely, I would. And again, Daniel and I, the director of the Behind the Curve, disagreed on this because he's, oh no, Mark will never give it up. What I was trying to say was the community would complain bitterly, and that whole mayor thing at the end. It's like, no, I'm not the leader of Flat Earth. I am like the freshman recruiter because I didn't invent Flat Earth 2.0. I did not invent.
Mark, what they were saying is that you were incentivized to not. It doesn't matter if you're the leader or not. He completely missed the point or is being obtuse intentionally about what was said to him because that's a part of the documentary. He was saying that you were incentivized to continue along with your role in this whether you believe it or not, because you get money and attention for this. This is your job now. It's not that if you were removed, the flat earth community would fall apart. It's that your life is based around this. Like, imagine if tomorrow I lost my goddamn mind. Like, imagine if tomorrow something genuinely happened and all of a sudden I believed in conspiracy theories or had an inkling for conspiracy theories. Let's say tomorrow, whatever the reason, whether I have had a mental break or this really happens, it doesn't matter. Let's imagine that tomorrow I'm walking around and an alien spaceship lands in front of me, abducts me. I have a full alien abduction experience that I believe wholeheartedly, right? And then they give me all sorts of evidence of things and then put me back right here. Even if I thought that was incredibly true and I thought it was real, which I wouldn't, I would assume I was having a mental break and, you know, but that's how delusions work. Delusions are self-protecting, so who knows? But either way, I couldn't practically come on this show and be like, guys, you're never going to believe what just happened, because it would destroy my credibility. It would destroy, like, everything I'm doing here. You know what I mean? Like, I would hope I would be honest, but honestly, I would, again, try and get help. But what I'm saying is, people don't usually do that. People don't just all of a sudden do that and change their entire thing overnight. That's what they're saying, Mark. You're incentivized to not change your shtick, even if you think it's not true. But whatever. Aaliyah says, imagine getting stuck next to this guy on a plane for hours. I would hit eject. Fennikagami says, bold of you, Hannah, to assume Mark and his ilk wouldn't try to fly the plane. Yeah.
At this.
Yeah.
But what I did was I created the 101 book. And I hate using the term the Dummy's Guide for Flat Earth because it sounds redundant. But it's but it's true. I created the Dummy's Guide for Flat Earth. And I said, look, this is how you get into it. And then afterwards, that's how people got in. So I'm the freshman recruiter.
We're pretty much at the end of our time, so I only have one more. I only can ask you one more question. Even though I feel like I could ask you 5 million questions.
This is what I do all day. I talk about this.
Yeah.
Okay. Go.
That's why you were invited.
Something I'm incredibly fascinated in is the idea of conspiratorial thinking, and there are actually questionnaires you could ask people to determine where they fit on that, and there's not necessarily a bad thing. It's not a bad thing at all. Conspiratorial thinking is probably evolutionarily sound to determine whether or not there are bad agents out there who are conspiring against you, because it happens, right?
Yeah.
But I've seen that the conspiratorial thinking within the conspiratorial community has created these bizarre schisms and layers.
Yeah.
Aren't there people in the flat Earth world?
Yes.
Who think that you are a secret agent, and this whole thing.
Oh, we're gonna end on that. Okay. Yes.
Like, so this is I'm going to ask this.
Yeah.
This is going to be a two-part question, and you're going to talk, and when you're done, we're done. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
One thing is, couldn't this be a conspiracy, like to hide an even deeper truth about the world?
Yes.
And like this is all false flag stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was put out there for you to find.
Yeah.
So that you would not go further and find the real truth.
Yep.
Okay.
Sure.
And secondly, there's like people like
I
Math
don't have that
Powerland,
Moss Law.
real name,
Might exist.
who think that you are part of a conspiracy to make other flat earthers look bad.
Exactly. There's
if
a
you
new
could-
term out there real
if
I
quick.
know
could
there are
wax-
some flat earthers that are like very like fundamentalist Christian that think that aliens and alien stories are demons. That's the closest, but I haven't seen them directly talk to each other.
Poetic about that. We'll end there.
Okay, real quick, there's a new term out there. You guys will hear it eventually. It's called auto-hoaxing, which is conspiracy people. There's a lot of conspiracy people that have seen so many conspiracies that they think basically every news story has the potential to be a conspiracy. So it's basically fake until proven real. No matter what it is on the media, that's what it is. Am I the greatest secret agent ever? No, I am not. No, I have nothing to do with any agency. Not at all. No, I'm not. And but yeah, because of the conspiracy world, people will be suspicious. Most of it's just envy.
Envy?
Yeah, most. I mean, Math.
They hate us because they ain't us.
The guy from Montreal.
But to keep it on track, and I swear this is the end.
Yeah.
How would we know for sure
that
you're not an agent?
How can I convince you that I'm not an agent?
Yeah, or anyone.
That's a good point.
I can only lead by example. I can only eventually. Okay, I'll tell people. It's like, look, if you're an agent, if you're like, co-Intel pro guy, eventually you're going to go off road. You're going to take the narrative. You're going to take the narrative. I'm into flat Earth. I'm in flat Earth. Then I'm going to take it a completely different direction and go David Koresh and build a compound and have stuff like that. And it hasn't happened. I tell people, I go, look, I've been doing this 4 years. What's my grand plan? When am I going to reveal all the secrets? It's like, no. I mean, but that's the best I can do. It's like,
I don't know if it's in bad faith or just accidentally, but I feel like he has this tendency to answer questions he's not being asked. He'll rhetorically shift the questions and answer a question that was not asked of him. Like when he was asked if he was an agent, he was like, I am not the world's greatest agent. Like, no one said that, first of all. Second of all, of course he's not like a secret agent. He's not working for anyone. He's a conspiracy theorist, or at least was. I think he still probably is to some extent, but I don't know. He'll answer questions you're not asking. That's frustrating.
look, I haven't done anything to make me look like an agent yet. So, but yeah, it's like be like me asking, so how do I know you're not in the Ku Klux Klan?
You just have to trust me.
Exactly.
Well, on that note, I put my trust in you, and from this point forward, I consider us fantastic friends despite being on the divide of an epistemic conundrum. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Trying to see if I had any of the news ones left, because those were broadly pretty interesting. We saw, this is a clip from a longer video.
The more I spoke to, the more skeptical and frustrated I became. It was unprofessional, but when the time came for my big interview with Mark Sargent, I just didn't give a fuck anymore.
You're one of the biggest dick swingers in the flat earth game. So, no offence.
No, that's right.
And when I say no offence, it means you can't get offended by what I say next.
I won't.
This is the dumbest shit I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
And your whole life is a lie.
Well, I've heard that before. I became a flat earther because I tried to disprove it or debunk it.
But do you not think the reason you can't debunk it is because you're a fuckwit?
No.
I appreciate that there are people like me in this world and the comedian doing this interview. I think both have their purpose.
No. I'm pretty clever problem solver.
I feel like I used to be that person. I'm not comfortable being that person anymore, but I'm pretty happy sometimes there are people out there like that do that from time to time. It's not what I want to do, but like, I get it.
How do you prove the Earth is flat?
By not finding the curve.
So flat Earth is not something you can prove, it's just something, you can disprove the round globe.
Exactly.
That's bad. That sounds shoddy.
I don't make up these rules. It's lawyers' rules. The stars and the planets are just pretty little lights. The sun and the moon are just bigger lights.
Like what, is it an LED display?
Screaming at the radio says, to be fair, I think it's doing them a disservice to take them seriously. I feel like you're misunderstanding taking them seriously and what the purpose is.
What is it?
The purpose isn't to take what they are saying and assume it is true necessarily, though you should always keep an open mind to some extent, even when it's ridiculous. You learn by hearing them talk. Like, if you just get them arguing and defensive, they're gonna say less. You learn things by talking to them on their terms so you understand how they're thinking, so that you can hopefully use that information to keep people from being in that situation, or help people out of that sort of thinking process. Like, there is a reason for that. Now, there are certain times and places you don't want to give people platforms where they're just going to spew things unquestioned, but there is a reason and purpose for certain contexts talking to people like this on some sort of level where you at least pretend you are respecting their beliefs, even if you think they're ridiculous. Does that make sense? No, of course they're not lawyer rules. He's completely ignoring, like, the burden of proof. He's just saying stuff.
Probably a little better than that.
Okay, look, this is ridiculous. Okay, just sorry, I don't mean to belittle your views.
It's okay.
But fuck your views.
This can't even exist on its own. It needs a solar system, a sun, and a galaxy around that, a universe around that.
Your one needs a fucking LED screen.
Don't take my word for it. Do your own research. Ask some questions.
So you were in a Netflix documentary.
Yep.
And how'd that go?
It went pretty well. We shot...
Bad. It went bad.
No, okay. I'm trying to put a positive spin on this. Turned out our biggest recruiting tool to date. In fact, a third of the 18 to 24s were on board with this. And they...
So dumb fucks.
Call it what you want.
People who don't know shit.
Well, there you go.
Mark had one good.
Well, that's certainly something, huh? Mark's a very strange guy. Yeah, I think Mark started out really believing this stuff. I think when he made these videos, these are the original videos, by the way. Sorry about the audio quality. They are bad.
Earth Clues Part 1, The Empty Theater. This is part of a series of clues that can help you get your head around both the design of the flat Earth system we live in and who has been involved in the deception to hide it from you.
So I think when he made these videos 9 years ago, he really believed it. These days, I'm not going to say there's no part of him that believes, but I think he's a lot less certain of it, at minimum. But he hides that because he knows that it would hurt him to admit. And I mean, materially. Flat Earthers would stop giving him money and attention. So. Anyway, so, I don't know. I thought that was interesting. Looking at Mark Sargent. If he continues, I'm sure we'll see him again in the future someday, but, you know. He's pretty boring, if I'm being honest now. I think he's interesting as a figure to look at how Flat Earth got so big, and the personalities that existed within the space early on, and how that has changed over time. But, how do I put this? There's sort of conspiratorial inflation, if that makes sense. Mark Sargent was really out there 10 years ago. Like, that was wild to hear someone was a flat earther. That's boring now. That's normal. Not normal, but, you know, people have heard of it. We're desensitized. So. Anyway, thanks for hanging out, everyone. Fun stream. We'll be back tomorrow for something else. Maybe Sovereign Citizens. What is today? Wednesday. Tomorrow's Thursday. Maybe we'll do another Theory Thursday. Take a look at some lectures or more intellectual stuff on conspiracies, psychology, whatever. Or maybe we'll just do something fun. I don't know. We will decide. Love you too, Mr. Blast. So, have a good night, everyone. Bye-bye.